In this video, we're gonna cover from beginning to end everything you need to know about spooling your fishing reels. We're gonna cover all the knots you need to know. We're gonna cover the importance of backing line and the 3 methods that you need to know to maximize that backing so you can put the exact amount of actual main line on your reels without wasting any money. One spool of line can spool 4 different fishing reels, fish-a-lots. So we're gonna cover that as well. We're gonna cover the 3 things you absolutely need to know and need to look up before you even start spooling your reel to begin with. We're gonna cover the presets that you need to put on your fishing reel so that you don't twist your line or tangle your line when you put it on. Nothing is more frustrating than spooling up your fishing line, hitting the water, and then of course you just got a big ball of tangled mess and you can't even fish with it. We're gonna cover the easiest tools on the planet that everybody has that you could use to spool your lines so that you don't injure yourself, burn your hands with your fishing line, or ruin your fishing line while you spool it up. Let me know in the comments out there if you're ever spooling your line with your hand and you notice all the wax that they put on the line comes off on your hand's yellow or green or whatever color you're spooling your line up with, right? We're gonna cover the absolute best way to spool your line with the simplest tools that everybody has. And then of course I'm gonna cover the different methods of backing and spooling for different fishing applications that you are going to be faced with, whether you're going to be casting for largemouth bass or deep dropping for flounder, blackfish, or fishing in heavy currents. So there's a lot of different fishing applications that may dictate how you spool your line, and we're going to cover that as well. This is going to be a 101 full tutorial, fish-a-lots, on how to spool your fishing reels. After this video, you will not have to watch another video on YouTube of how to spool your fishing reels. And best part about it, I'm going to do it myself. I got 10 reels behind me that all need new line, and I'm going to show you exactly how we're going to maximize this line, and you're going to be shocked at the end of this video of exactly how much line I went through, because it's going to be super efficient and you're going to get a lot out of this one, fish-a-lots. So stay tuned, and of course, let's get into it. All right, fish-a-lots, let's start this video off with some value and answer that first question, which is, when do you change your fishing line? And the answer to that is not a time period, but over time, when you cut away your line because you're suffering different nicks and abrasion in your line, and that line starts to get low on the spool, where you have enough distance here between your main line and the end of the spool that your casting distance starts to suffer. That is when I change my fishing spool. And that advice right there could save you absolutely tons of money. This main line right here is over 3 years old. And the only reason why I'm gonna change it is because right now I'm getting to be about 1/4 of an inch from my main line to my spool right here. And I'll show you that right now. If I get ever 1/4 of an inch from my main line to the end of the spool right there, I hope you could see that. That is when my casting distance really starts to suffer enough where I want to change that line. And we are just about at 1/4 of an inch right there. So it's time to change up the line. Now, the other thing I'm going to mention right now, but I'm going to get into it a little bit further, is by using backing, I'm basically going to ensure that I don't waste the entire bottom piece of the spool and just throw away my money on braided fishing line. This line is loaded with monofilament backing, and I'm going to show you that right now. And of course, our first reel to be spooled up here is the Lose bait caster, and this is an absolutely fantastic reel, by the way, fish-a-lots. I mean, just check this out before you even start dealing with the line. Just listen to this. Listen how smooth that is. I mean, that's amazing. This reel is under $100, by the way, and is absolutely a fantastic option if you're looking to bass fish, crappie fish, panfish, I mean, whatever. You can really use this for literally anything, and it's just so smooth. And I really recommend these Lose fishing reels. But let me get to the main point. I'll leave a description, by the way, of everything I use in the channel below if you want to check it out, or, you know, this interests you in any way. So the next tip here on spooling, let's get back to the main subject at hand, of course. That is, you have to know 3 things about each reel before you ever start spooling. A lot of this information will be on the box. However, if you do find yourself, like Cast King does this, where they have no information on the box whatsoever, just make sure to look this up before you start spooling your fishing reels. And that is the line capacity. So that'd be this right here. So this reel for 12-pound test line is going to take up 120 yards of line. That is a massive amount of line. So basically, I'm using 15-pound braid, which I know is the equivalent of 6-pound test line. So that means I could put 240 yards of 15-pound braid on this reel, and that would be a ridiculous amount of braid, and I wouldn't even use half of it. So the goal is you have to use backing right here for 2 reasons, especially on bait casters and spinning reels. Well, I mean on any reel, right? And that is, you need backing of monofilament so that the braid has something to bite into. And I would always use mono because it's the cheapest line. You could buy a ton of it. The worst thing you could do is spool up your fishing reel with braid and then have the braid spin on the spool when you go to use it. You're gonna have to take it all off. You're gonna have to do it all over again. So always put backing on there. I always use backing. You'll see guys on the YouTubes with the stickers on them and the fancy boats telling you to put, 300 yards of braid on this thing, and that's a colossal waste of money. Just put the backing on here, and this way too, if you ever want to change line, like let's say, you want to use this for something else, or you're going to use this in high currents, or you're going to use this in an area where you need either heavier or lighter line, you could always just take off that 150 yards we're going to put in here. We're going to put on 150 yards of braid, and we're going to match that for the line capacity with the backing, so that when I get to the backing on this fishing reel, I know it's time to change the braid, and I don't have to take off 300 yards of braid. I'm only going to take off the 150, which by that time will probably be only about 50 yards of braid, and that is how you maximize your money with these fishing reels. The next thing you have to know is the inches per turn. So that's this right here. So this is 28 inches rotation by turn. And basically what that comes out to is about 1 yard. It's 0.2 inches short of 1 yard for every turn. So for every 5 turns I make of this fishing reel, I'll be short 1 yard. So by knowing that, all I have to do is count how many turns I make of the reel when I'm spooling it, and I'll know exactly how much line is going on this reel, so that when I go to respool it, I know I got to respool it with 150 yards of line. By not guessing and removing the guesswork out of here, you will save a ton of money on fishing line. And then of course, the next thing you want to know is just a line diameter. So, 12-pound tests will 12-pound mono, I should say, will fit 120 yards. So that's 6-pound diameter on 15-pound test line of J-braid. And so now I know the capacity of the reel, the diameter of the line to fill it, and then of course the inches per turn. Those are the 3 things you have to know for every single time you spool up your fishing reels, because that will avoid all sorts of guesswork. You'll see a lot of reels that come quote unquote braid ready, and that's a bunch of nonsense. So you can see this little black line right there, and that is some traction for that braid to catch when you're actually spooling your line initially. And I can tell you, this stuff just does not work. So if you just take your braid and just spool it on here, and you could use a piece of tape, that'll kind of keep the braid tight enough at first, but you run the risk of when this turns that the braid can spin on the spool. So I never just tie a knot and braid right to the fishing reel right here, because it could turn. You always fish lots want to use backing when you're spooling your braid, so that the braid cuts into the backing and secures itself, so you never ever have to deal with, the line turning on the spool separate of you reeling it in. All right, and so I'm gonna do the flip here. I'm gonna flip this line on this Shimano Bait Runner 4000, and I'm gonna put it on this Lew's bait caster right here. And to do that, I'm gonna first put on my backing, which is gonna be Suffolk 6-pound test line. Now you could use whatever backing you want. I'm not actually gonna fish with the backing. When I get close to this backing, I'm gonna change the braid. But what I wanna do is I wanna know exactly how much braid is going on there, so I wanna use similar diameters. The 6-pound diameter in suffix mono is almost the exact same diameter as the 15-pound J-braid braided main line. So I know I could put 240 yards of 15-pound J-braid on there. So I'm just gonna count the turns and just put about 100 yards of this mono on and then 150 yards of that braid. And that's gonna work out perfectly well because I'll know with each spool that I have or that I want to respool this lose with, I'll have about 150 yards I'm gonna be working with. All right, and first step always whenever I spool my fishing rods is I always actually run all the line through the entirety of the rod, just like I'm gonna start fishing. And you're gonna see why that's so important as we go through the demos here of how to spool all these different kinds of fishing rods and reels. So I literally will run this through all the guides of the rod. And now when I get down to the spool itself, now I'm ready to tie on this backing right here. And that is going to be so important because of the way I'm going to spool this on with the box vice grip and pair screwdriver. So I'm actually going to use the rod itself to help me spool on the reel. And that's something that basically nobody that I've seen does. I'm the only one that does this, and you're going to see why this is so great here in a minute. And all right, and so now that you ran everything through the eyes of your fishing rod, it's time to actually spool your fishing reel with some backing. So of course you're going to take a line. Again, this is 6-pound test, so it's going to be a little bit hard to see. You want to put it through the eye there of the reel itself. So go ahead and push that all the way through. And you want to give yourself plenty of line here to work with. And there you go. Now you're ready to start spooling. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to tie the uni knot. That's right, our good old friend, the uni knot, which could be used for everything, basically, for inshore fishing. And I'm going to take this out and we're going to get spooling. Now that you got the line wrapped around the spool, again, I'm not sure if you could see it because it's only 6-pound mono, but I like to wrap this twice around the spool here because it just cinches down the knot a little bit easier when you do this. So what I want to do is I want to pull out some line here and we're just going to tie the double uni knot. So I'm going to fold my line. So I'm going to take my line here. Okay, you want to double it up. All right, so I got my lines doubled up here. Here's my tag end is all the way over here. So again, just give yourself some plenty of line to work with, and I'm going to make a loop. Okay, there it is. There's one loop right there. Now I'm going to take my tag end, which is right here, and I'm going to pass it through the loop 5 to 7 times. And this is a uni knot. Now folding over the line is important because that's what's going to cinch it down in totality over your spool right there. So there we go. We're just going to kind of keep looping it one after the other. You don't have to go nuts here. There's your uni. Comes all the way through. You're going to cinch it down. Okay, pull on all ends. Look at that, it cinches down beautiful. You got to love the uni. And then you're going to tighten it all down right here by pulling on that tag end of the line. You're going to push it all the way through just like this and take a look at how that cinches down. Now when you get to this point, you're going to move it back and forth. I use my fingers, I kind of help it along, but that's it. You can see as you move that back and forth, it kind of cinches down on itself, and that is really a great way to tie your backing line onto your spool right there. And that line is not going anywhere. Take a look. Again, I don't know if you can see that because of the light mono that I'm using, but there you have it. That line is not going anywhere, and that will not spin on the spool. So the double uni knot is really awesome for tying your main line or any line to the base of your spool. And we're going to do that again as I show you different spinning reels and different things like that. It's really, really great. Look at that. No line is moving on that spool whatsoever. Now, there's absolutely a ton of nonsense out there about all these different tools and things you can use to spool your fishing reels, right? A million different ways that you can waste your money. Or you can do the Johnny Fish Law way, where all you need is a pair of vice grips that you probably have in your shed, a screwdriver, which I know you probably have in a shed or laying somewhere around the house, and a box, which if you're anything like me, these come in at least 1,500 times a day via Amazon, you know, via the spouse or whatever else, right? My wife loves her some Amazon, that's for sure. These are literally the only 3 things you need to spool your line ever. A box, screwdriver, pair of vice grip pliers. All right, let me show you the easiest way on the planet to spool your fishing reels right now. And now, fish lots, I'm going to show you why this box method is going to be so advantageous to spooling your fishing lines. And basically, a huge advantage to this is that you are going to secure your line to the box via the screwdriver and the vice grip, which is in here. Let me show you why some of the bucket recommendations and other recommendations for spooling your line could lead to a little bit of a mess. So first and foremost, if you are going to use a bucket, okay, there's a standard 5-gallon bucket from Home Depot, and of course this is just a birdseed bucket I had from Home Depot. I always recommend the square buckets, and the reason for this is you'll be able to actually pin the spool in the corner of the box and not have it lay down like this and the line just come off randomly like that off the spool. That is going to result in a ton of tangles. However, the problem with this is that for spools like this that are very narrow in diameter, it's going to be really hard to keep this pinned in the corner coming off just right. As you can see right there, it's going to want to lay flat in the bucket, and that is a recipe for absolute tangled disaster mess when you start spooling your line. Now, if you go over to the circle bucket, you can't actually lay this anywhere in here where it's not going to want to lay down like that. So as you reel, the tendency is this thing's going to want to spin all over the place like that, and you're inevitably going to be pulling off your line as it lays flat, which is the absolute worst thing you could do for spooling fishing line. So the square bucket approach is good if you have a bigger spool of line, something like this, whereas I could pin it in the corner here, and as I spool the line, okay, you could tell that line is going to want to spool off while trapped in a corner. It's not going to lay flat just because of the diameter of that fishing spool. And that is where the square bucket method is way superior than the circle bucket method, because it's going to want to spin around this bucket and lay flat on its side just like that, and you're going to get a bunch of tangles. Now, the disadvantage of the bucket, of course, is that you're going to physically have to hold your line as you spool it in. And of course, as you spool it, you could literally burn your hands with mono or braid. Line could absolutely cut and hurt you. And also, you're a human being, so your grip's going to weaken and tighten as you spool on, and it's not going to be as tight of a spool on your fishing reel as you could possibly get it, and that could be an issue, especially when we're dealing with exact numbers where I want to save you guys money on your fishing line. So let's now look at the box and all the advantages that that offers over the bucket method. And this brings us to the box, screwdriver, and vice grip method, and this literally couldn't be easier. You're simply going to take your screwdriver and you're going to put it through your box. See, just like that. So now you got a screwdriver through the box. You're going to take your line, your fishing line that you want, and this is the trick here, right? This is the important part. You want the line coming off the top of the spool. So it doesn't matter if you got it label face in or out. You'll hear that all the time, like make sure the labels, it doesn't make a difference. You just want that line coming off the spool like this on top. I'm going to show you that a little bit better here in a minute, but right now it's easier just to do it label side first. So you're going to poke that through. So now you got your fishing line on the box with your screwdriver, and here comes Mr. Vice Grip. So now what you're going to do is you're just going to clamp on the vice grips as tight as you can onto the box, just like that. And now those vice grips are going to weigh down the box so that the box doesn't fly up and roll all around as you reel in your line, and B, it's going to provide a lot of tension on that spool for when you're reeling in your fishing line, and that is going to ensure that you get the line on perfect and that you don't have any tangles. And of course, if ever you do have an issue where you reel in the line, like the box is a little unstable, you can just add any sort of weight. So for me, I'm just going to put this 2-pound weight in there. That'll weigh down the box perfectly. You could use a water bottle. You could use literally anything to do that. But the important piece is that the line is secured and not going to go anywhere via these vice grips right here. So let's get reeling. I'll show you how perfect this spools onto your fishing reels. And all right, fish lots, now we're ready to spool. We got it hooked up to our box right over there. We got our backing ready to go. And before you ever spool on your line ever for anything, what you always want to do is just tighten down your drag. And this applies for spinning reels or bait casters or conventional reels. You just want to make sure that that line is going to go on as tight as possible. The worst thing you can do is be reeling in and then spin the spool. On a spinning reel, it's even worse because it'll twist the line and that'll just make your life miserable because quite honestly, you're gonna have a ton of tangles. Bait caster's not so bad, but you do want to make sure that that line goes on the spool nice and even. And so let's begin. So you'll see I'll tighten up the line here. And what I want to do is I want to put a bend in that rod to kick off that spool right there. So take a look. So I'm going to put that nice bend in the reel and that keeps pressure on the line. See that? And what I want to do is when I'm reeling it in, okay, I have a lot of pressure on the line without me having to hold it. Take a look. So you can see the bend in the rod right there, and I'm spooling on the line, and that bend is really what I want as I reel it in. That vice grip is keeping it nice and tight. This way I don't have to hold the line, I don't have to burn my hand, I don't have to remove the waxing. I'm just good. And now I have enough mono on my rod where that braid can bite in and I can maximize the spool with braid. Let me see how many winds I got on there, count them, let you know, and then we'll get back to spooling. All right, and after a quick little count there, because I can't count and talk and explain things all at the same time, I have about 30 wraps I counted on this. So I got to count about 70 more. That'll put me at 100. So I think that's two. This is where I started from. So I want to make sure I know where the reel handle is. So I just did two more. So say 32, 33, 34, 35, 36, 37, 38. And again, you can see that bend in that rod up there. That's what's important. I don't have to hold it. I'm not putting pressure on it. I'm not doing anything. I'm just using the box and the vice grips to keep pressure on here. And look how beautiful that line lay is right there. I mean, you can't get anything better than that. So we're gonna keep going. Again, I need about 100 wraps. That'll be roughly 100 yards on here, which means I'll put easily another 150 with the braid once I get it. 97, 98, 99, 100. And that's it. Now we're ready to put on the main line. I got about 100 yards of backing on here and 150 yards of flipped braid line is coming up. So let's get on that. And so for the next step, of course, now we're gonna connect our backing line to the line that we already have on our spinning reel using the flip method. And you can do this with just about anything. You see right over here, this is something that goes on like the front of your truck. You could use a classic little spike that you would use on the beach right here. Not a big deal whatsoever. You just stick this in the ground, put the rod in, and then you can flip the line. Basically anything that holds a rod. For me, I have a rod carrier that I use for the beach or whenever I'm traveling with some gear, and this is just going to be the easiest because it's on wheels. But if you don't have anything at all, you can literally just use two chairs, wedge them up together, put the rod in it. Anything that will hold a rod will be good for this flip method. But before we do the flip method, let me show you the line-to-line connection knot as promised so that we could get the main line connected to the backing line, and it couldn't be easier. All right, fishlets, this might be tough to see. Again, this is 6-pound monofilament here, but basically we're just gonna use the double uni knot here. So you're just gonna cross your lines, okay? So the tag ends are gonna be in opposite directions. I always like to do the mono side first. Okay, I'm gonna make my loop on the mono side. So now you're gonna wrap this tag end here around both the braid and the mono. And 5 to 7 times is just about good. Again, I don't plan to use this line. This is literally just gonna be the backing. So I think that was 3, 4, 5. We'll call that good. You grab all tag ends, all 4 tag ends right there, and you cinch it all down. Perfect. And now we're going to do the braid side. Now what I will say, anytime you're tying the double uni knot with braid to mono, just keep in mind you want to do double the wraps on the braid side than you have on the mono side because braid is so much lower in diameter. So in this case we're using 15-pound braid and 6-pound mono, so the diameter is actually pretty close to being the same. So There we go. We're just gonna, I think that was 3. I'm gonna do it anyway, do double, just because it's braid. Just get in the habit of doing that. Now, if you're using the same diameter like we are here today, you're probably good with the 5 to 7 wraps, but we're gonna just keep on going just because I want you guys to get in the habit of doubling up that line on the braid side than on the mono side. So I think that was close to 10. I'll do one more just for good luck. There we go. So there's your braid right there. All loop, looks great. Tie it all together. Perfect. What you're gonna do is you're gonna grab both ends, the mono side and the braid side, and check it out. Let's move those 2 lines together, and they're gonna cinch up perfectly right there. Put a little pressure on them, make sure it's good. There, all right. Now you're ready to go. Clip off these tag ends right here, and now we're ready to do the swap or the flip to save ourselves some money and some fishing line. Now, with the line connection complete, I'm gonna put that right into my carriage right there. Basically, again, anything that holds a rod will do just fine. And now here's our line right here. It's ready to go onto our Lew's baitcaster reel. And the only other prep you need is just to make sure you got a little bit of drag set on this. You don't want too much drag, but you want enough. That's pretty good. You want enough to where you're putting some pressure on that rod to get the line. Actually, I'm going to loosen it up just a little bit. There you go. That's good. So you don't want to put too much on it. We're really struggling to get the line on, but you want enough where it's going to give you a little bit of pressure and that line's going to go on perfect. So that's good right there. All right, now let's start spooling it up. And all right, so it is absolutely hotter than Hades out here, so we're going to do this quick. That's it. That's basically what I want, is just that line coming out with enough pressure where I could reel it in. So here's my line right here. We're going to start spooling it. And there you go. You could hear the line coming out of my other spool right there. You could see it right there. Let's take a look. See, with a little bit of pressure on there, it's gonna come out just great. And then we're gonna spool it. And again, we're gonna count. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We're looking at about 150 turns. So we're gonna count 150 turns, make sure there's at least 150 yards. And I wanna point something out. Look at that braid right there. It's a little bit beat up, if you could see it. That braid is just a little bit beat up, and that is the line that I've been using for quite a while, 3 years now, carp fishing and catfishing and bass fishing and every other type of fishing, and it's getting a little beat up. You can kind of see it in that spool. But now when we get to the bottom of that spool, where I'm going to use a majority of this line, it's going to be perfect, pristine, brand new line. It's going to save us a ton of money. All right, let's keep reeling. All right, guys, so very similar to that box method. I just want constant pressure on a line. You can see the bend in that fishing rod right there, and you can see the bend in this rod right here, and that is a perfect tension of line. I'm not looking to kill the fishing reel here with the pressure on the drag, but just so I got a bend in the rod and the line comes out, and that's gonna be perfect. I think I'm close to 40 wraps here. Again, this isn't gonna be exact because I'm doing the tutorial, but you get the idea if you're doing this at home. And this is really how to spool your line perfectly each and every time. 150. That was perfect. That was 150 turns, almost exactly. I mean, I was counting and kind of screwing up as I went along, but that is darn perfect to what we wanted to put on here. So that's 150 yards of line on there on main line, and that is exactly what we wanted. All right, Fisher, let's just take a look at how lovely that line went on. As tight as can be because we had it under pressure. I never held the line, not even once, and that is a beautiful spool of line. Now, just so you know, I'm not flubbing anything or fibbing anything, okay? I'm all hooked up still to this fishing rod right here. Here, I'm pulling it, and you can see the reel there pulling it. So I'm still all sorts of hooked up there, and I want to show you something. So let me let out some line just so I have something to work with here. Now, as I said before, I'm going to use some tape measures, or a tape measuring device here, just some tape. You could use anything that bends a little bit so you can manipulate it on the spool. But again, I want 1/16 of an ounce or 1/16 of an inch, this first little dot right here, because that is the ideal line for me, because I could get maximum casting out of this. And take a look at that right there. Hopefully the camera could show up. That is exactly 1/16 of an inch on the spool. So I got 150 yards on there, so I know exactly how much line is on there. When I get to the backing of this spool in the future, I know that 150 yards will be the perfect spool amount so that I can maximize my distance casting. This also gives me a benefit because it gives me a lot of line to work with when I fray this and cut it away, because when I get down to about 1/4 of an inch, this tick right here, when I get to 1/4 of an inch, that's when I have to re-spool. So I'm a ways away, at 1/16 of an inch. I'm gonna have this line on here for a long time, I'm sure. And that is the perfect spooling, and I didn't spend a dime. This was on my reel previously, and this is brand new, fresh fishing line. Look at the difference there between that line that I'm showing you right there and the line that you saw when I was first spooling up that reel. And that is the reason why we do the flipping technique. Didn't cost a dime, fish lots, won't cost you a dime either. And that is the beauty of flipping fish lots right there. Now we're gonna do this again. I'm gonna show it to you all the way through with another group of reels, the same exact reel, a Shimano Bait Runner 4000 and a Daiwa bait casting reel with a little bit different capacity, but they don't make the reel anymore. So I'm gonna show you another method we could use to make sure you get the perfect amount of line on if you have no numbers to go off of. So let's get into that one. All right, fish lots, so there's our emptied spool of the Shimano Bait Runner 4000, and of course there's my second spool of the Shimano Bait Runner 4000, and of course we're going to put this on this Daiwa. Now this rod, or this reel here I should say, they don't even make this reel anymore. I absolutely love it. You could see it on a lot of my videos, and this is the Daiwa Team Pro series fishing reel, and it's very similar to that Lose, so I'm going to use the same numbers. Now take a look at this. You remember I said I really like to use measurements here to make sure that when I get to about 1/4 of the way down the fishing reel, I like to change my line. That is 1/4 almost exactly, and so it's time to change the spool out. Now I really got this down to the minimum. You can actually see the backing right there a little bit through the spool, and so I'm good with the backing. Okay, it's about 1/4, it's probably a little less than 1/4 of an inch down the reel, but I know I have a lot of line on this reel right here. Now I've been cutting it away, I've been carp fishing, you know, again that one's getting low itself, so I have full faith that 150 yards of that fishing line from the Shimano Bait Runner is going to fit on this, and that's really what I want. And so we're going to do the flip again, but first let me show you probably the best and most efficient way to remove line from your fishing reel. I cannot salvage this line. I used it all the way down to the backing. There's probably about 30 yards left on it, so this is going to have to be disposed of. And let me show you the greatest trick of all on how to despool and of course get rid of this fishing line. All right, and here's probably the greatest trick you could use to de-spool your line. And basically all this is just regular wire hanger, right? You get any tool you want to cut a wire hanger. I mean, these are just a pair of wire cutters. This works just good. See, just cut it right off. I can keep these parts because my kids will find them, I'm sure. So there you go. Now I just cut that off because this is actually going to go into this Black & Decker drill bit, and you'll see where I'm going with this in a minute. I actually found this on YouTube. This was not my own idea, but it's a great idea, and I forget who did it. If I remembered, I'd give them credit for it, but honestly I forget. I can't remember what I had for breakfast half the time. So just know I did find this off of YouTube, and that's what's so great about YouTube, right, is you get these great ideas. So now I got this up, I'm going to bend this up a little bit, and you're going to see why. Okay, so I got it just like that. So that's my tool here for getting my line off my spool. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to put it into my Black & Decker. I use that part here because it's the thickest part. It fits in the Black & Decker the best. I'm going to put that in there. Tighten it down straight would help. There we go. All right, now make that nice and tight. Don't want that going anywhere. All right, now there's your tool, okay? Take a look, there you go. And that's going to be how we're going to de-spool the line right here. So now let's grab the line. There we go. This is a spool I just showed you. Line is just beat to tar, not salvageable one bit. I'm just going to put it down right like that. I'm going to make some wraps around this here. Okay. Just so the line's wrapped up on there. Okay, you don't have to make a knot or anything really, but that'll do it. Okay, so I just wrapped the line up. Now check this out. I got my drag on there set pretty loose. I don't want a bird's nest as I do this. And check it out. I'm just de-spooling my line right here. There he goes. So now the reason why you want to loosen up that drag, of course, is because you don't want a backlash as you de-spool your line. You can see the spool is moving. My Black & Decker is moving. There we go. Off comes all the line. How about that, Fish-A-Lots? Super easy way to get old line off your spool to get the new line on. There you go. Here you go. I just moved this here so you can get a better look. There you go, the Black & Decker unspooling the line. There you go, you see the spool moving. There you go, Fish-A-Lots. What a great way to remove line off that spool. And there you go, Fish-A-Lots. A perfectly stripped spool of line right there. And now, here's the best part about it. I'm going to show you how to dispose of the line right here. So basically, you just loosen this up. There you go. Your Black & Decker is free. Your hanger with all the line on it is right there. We're going to cut the excess line right here. Okay, spool is now de-lined. And now I'm going to show you the best part. All right, Fish-A-Lots, so here you have your braid. Okay, always use a pair of pliers. Don't do this next step while holding the braid. And then, of course, next step is we're just going to burn it. Burning it is the most environmentally friendly way to get rid of fishing line because if you just throw this in the dump, what ends up happening is birds could get in it. Birds like to frequent dumps all the time, and then it could re-enter the environment. So once this stuff gets burning, it burns and it absolutely turns into liquid magma. So just be careful. Use a pair of pliers or something and just burn it on up. You can use a lighter. Even better is if you have one of those like blowtorch things for the lawn or whatever. I actually do have them. They're in my shed. And that is literally the best part to get rid of your line. And look at that stuff burning. You can see the braid bubbling on each other, burning away. That is just great. What you want and how to get rid of fishing line. So I'm going to continue burning this. And then we'll come back to spooling your rods. And there you go. It's on fire. I don't have it anymore. It's good to go. There it goes. That's just going to burn itself out. So we'll move on to respooling our fishing line. And again, we're going to use Suffolk 6-pound monofilament. This is going to be the closest line diameter for that 15-pound test. So again, we're just going to spool this up from the top, just like we would that we were fishing, even though we're just using this for backing. Keep on spooling, and we're going to get this all rigged up here. Rigging it all up, getting it ready to go. All right, Fish-A-Lots, so next up we're gonna do the exact same thing with the exact same reels like I showed you, only this reel is out of service. I haven't seen it around for about 15, 20 years. I've been using this thing forever. It's a Daiwa Team Pro bait casting reel. So what I'm gonna do is a very similar reel to that Lose that I showed you in a previous episode or in the previous segment. And so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna use the Lose numbers here. What I'm also gonna do is I'm gonna show you the second method for spooling your fishing line that is absolutely fantastic, and that is just using some measuring in inches to see how much line is going to go on and to maximize the amount of line I could put on this reel. So again, we're going to use the flipping method from this reel to this reel, but we're going to use a second method as well, just measuring it out for the backing to make sure that I put enough main line on here, I don't get myself into trouble, and I maximize my casting distance. So we're going to combine two methods here. One is the flip method, and the other one, of course, is just using some measuring tape. All right, I'll show you how it works. First step, of course, though, I got to tie that uni knot so I can tie in the backing. So the uni knot's going to go on the spool. I'll show you that now. Next up, the box, the screwdriver through the box. There we go, just like that. The line on the box. Again, always make sure the line is coming off the spool just like that. And then of course, the vice grips. Put some pressure on the spool, put some pressure on the vice grips, snap it shut, and now you're ready to spool your line. And again, if you want, you can put a little weight in there or whatever, something to weigh it down so it doesn't fly all over the place. But the vice grips usually are enough to hold it down. Now, as always, before you spool, you always want to tighten down that drag as much as possible. You don't want any spinning lines. There you go. The other tip right there, the presets for your line. And then look at that uni knot holds just great. And you can see the line's going to go on there nice and smooth. All right, time to fill the backing. So hopefully you can see that bend in the rod right there. Let me put it up against a tree. So there's a bend in the rod right there. That's exactly what you want. See, there's the pressure you need, and there you go. You can see that line spinning. I'm going to count the turns here. So in this technique, I'm going to show you that reeling this to about 1/4 of an inch to away from this spool right here is also a great way to see how much spool you could put on here and really take out the guesswork of how much backing is necessary for your line. And that's really the purpose of this backing. I want the braid to be able to bite into this. And then of course, I also want to get this on as tight as possible. This way I don't waste all sorts of braid by putting 300 yards of braid on here when 150 of it are never going to see the light of day. So I'm going to fill this up to about 1/4 of an inch to the end of this red spool right here. And you're going to see that's going to work out just fine for 150 yards of braid. And there you go. That should be about 1/4 of an inch down. We'll have enough backing. We could throw at least 150 yards of braid on there. So let's see where we're at. This is the measuring technique. This works equally well for bait casters or for spinning rods, for spinning reels, I should say. So there we go, put that in. There we go, perfect. All right, see a little bit of finagling, look at that. 1/4 of an inch on the dot. There you go, perfect. So now I'm ready to put on my braid. Let's see how much I get on there. Now I know I have at least 150 on that spinning reel, so we should be pretty good. All right, fish lots, we got our backing on. Next up, of course, is to reverse or flip the fishing line on the Shimano Bait Runner 4000 onto the bait caster. And so, of course, we're gonna connect those lines with the double uni knot. Okay, so we have our braid right here. We have our mono right here. Not sure if you could see it. Just gonna do the double uni. I like doing the mono part first. So I'm gonna make my loop just like that. And 5 to 7 times around is what I'm going to do. So 1, okay, that should be good. Tighten it down. Wonderful. Now is the braid side. So again, we typically do more on the braid side just because braid is lower in diameter. However, we're using similar diameter line, so we can get away with 5 to 7 on this side as well. And if you want to see a full tutorial on the uni knots, I have videos on that. I'll leave a description below. That's good enough. We're going to tighten that down. Again, I am not going to use this line for fishing. Now we're going to tighten it down here. You can see it cinches together. Perfect. Just make sure nothing's slipping. Okay, it's not. Look at that. That is perfect. So cut off the tag ends and you're ready to go. Okay, next up, I take my line and reel to be flipped. I put it in whatever storage device you may have available. And then you want to loosen that drag. So that drag's too tough. Loosen it up. That should be about right. Next up, of course, you're going to pick up your rod. Now the key is you just want a bend in your rod right there. That's the key. So that's really it. As long as you have a bend right there, you're doing pretty good. You can tell that line is going on just so nice. So smooth. And look, you could already tell that line was a little beat up on the front end, just like the last line. But now, once you get in there a little bit, look at that. That looks like brand new line all of a sudden again. And that's exactly why we do it this way. There's a bend in my rod right there. I'm gonna continue spooling. that pressure on that line the whole time, by the way, really makes the reps really tight, and you can maximize how much line you're getting on here at the perfect amount. And that really is going to be quite awesome at the end of the day here. There we go. So we're about done. All right, so there's a max spool line from this spinning reel right here. Now let's see how much we got. And there you go, fish lots. Another perfectly put on spool right there. I mean, that is just, look at that line. That is like brand new line, and it is, because it was buried under that spinning rod. So the flip technique, fish lot, saves you a ton of money, a ton of time. Now let's see if the second technique actually works. Let's go to inches. I want this to be 1/16 of an inch to maximize my casting. So there's the red right there. Let's see if my technique works here. There, perfect. There you go. First tick mark right by my finger. And that's about as much line as I want on there. And take a look at that. That is just a technique that I use measuring it. If you take any 3,000 or 4,000 size spinning reel, or if you take just a regular bait casting reel for largemouth bass, let's say, it could be for anything though, but you know, fairly size. Again, this is an old reel, so I don't know what size it is. I lost the box, but you put a quarter backing on here. So when you're done with your backing, if you have a quarter of an inch between the backing and this red piece, the inside of this spool, you will be able to easily fit on at least an additional 150 yards of braid, which is perfect. I never want to use the braid all the way down to the base of this reel because it really destroys my casting ability, right? The lower this braid goes on this reel, the less distance I'm going to be able to cast, and that is going to hurt me in the long run. So instead of unspooling and wasting all that braid, an additional 150 to 170 yards of braid underneath this spool, you just do the flip method, you put some backing on there, take the guesswork out, and whammo, you have a perfectly spooled line. And look how fresh that braid is under there. It's amazing. It's new braid, basically. It's absolutely new braid, and this is going to be absolutely fantastic. All right, let's go on to the next method, and I'll show you how this works for spinning gear. Now, let's talk about the importance of backing. Backing is absolutely essential for spooling your line because you want to make sure, A, if you're using braid, that it could bite into the line and secure itself to your backing. If you don't use backing, you run the threat of the braid spooling on the line, especially with spinning reels, spooling on the line separate from the movement of the reel. Nothing is more frustrating than that. Backing is also a great way to prevent yourself from wasting a ton of money on fishing line. If you use the exact backing on your fishing reels, you could avoid the guesswork and know exactly how much main line you need for your reel. And of course, we covered 3 different ways to do this. One way, of course, is just by using math. You could look up the reel's capacity, the inch per turn, and the diameter of the line that you want to put on there. And you could use an online calculator, or you could do the math yourself, and you could calculate exactly how much line you're putting on your reel every turn of the spinning reel. And that's a great way to do it. I'm not that great at math, and so that is not my preferred method. The other method you could use is just the measuring method. And the measuring method is simply, if you're using a basic spinning reel, right? So a 3,000 to 4,000 size reel, somewhere in that range, and a regular bait casting reel for, let's say, largemouth bass, you could put backing on the reel until you get to about a quarter of an inch between the monofilament backing and the end of the spool. If you use a quarter of an inch for that, that means that you will easily be able to put on a ton of braid, or, you know, a more expensive mono or fluoro onto your reel and not waste the entire spool. A good rule of thumb is if you put a quarter of an inch of backing on between the end of the backing and the spool, you could put about 150 yards of braid or fluoro on that spool as well. So if you purchase 300 yards of line, this is great, because what it means is if you use that measuring technique, you could easily fill 2 fishing reels with this line, and you'll know exactly how much line you've used. The third way to spool your line, and this is really a great way, is the reverse spooling technique. So in a previous video, I explained that I had a 4,000 size Shimano bait runner that I wanted to switch from braid over to mono. I got a bug in my ear. That's the advantages of filming outside, I guess. I had 2 bait casting reels that needed line. So I took the line off this, we flipped it, saved a bunch of money on line, but now I have 2 identical Shimano 4000 bait runners that I'm gonna need some fishing line on. And the fishing line I wanna use is this stuff right here, this Berkeley Connect, which is awesome carp fishing line that I got from Europe. I can't find this anywhere else really. And I got 1,200 meters of this stuff. So that's roughly about 1,320 yards of line. Now, even though I have a ton of this stuff, I don't want to waste it. It's not readily available for me. And so I want to maximize a line to put on those reels. I want to put about 200 yards, anywhere from 150 to 200 yards of this line on my spools. And I want to keep track of exactly how much line is coming off this spool. This is fantastic mono. It's kind of like a copolymer, actually. It's not really like a mono. A copolymer is basically a monofilament coated with fluorocarbon. So unlike most monos, this line will sink. It stretches, but it just doesn't stretch as much as regular monofilament, and it's pretty good in diameter. This is 18-pound test line, but the diameter is 0.4 millimeters, which is perfect. 0.4 millimeters diameter means I can catch a big fish. It could run me into all sorts of cover, and this has enough diameter on it where it's not gonna bust me off all the time. That's why I wanna save as much of this line as possible. I really don't see it around, and I wanna know exactly how much is going on my line, which is why we're gonna use the reverse spooling method. So let's get into that. Now, the reverse spooling technique is going to be really great, and it's going to be perfect for what I want to do with that really nice, hard to find fishing line, that Berkeley Direct Connect. Now, what I'm going to do with this line though is I need to know inches per turn. So I looked it up on the good old Google machine, right? If it's not on the box, you can usually find it on Google. And these bait runners take 28 inches per turn. So 28 inches per turn on the Shimano reel is about 0.2 inches off of a yard. So basically, for every 5 turns of this spinning reel, I'll be short 1 yard. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna count my main line, which I'm gonna load on first, okay? And I'm gonna load the backing on second, and then I'm gonna reverse spool this from this spool onto this spool, which means the backing will go on first, and then the main line will go on second. And now the important thing is I need to count exactly how many turns I take of both the main line and the backing line, because I won't have anything to reverse spool when I get to this empty spool. But if I make the count just right, it'll come out exactly the same in both spools, and I'll save a ton of money in fishing line. And you know, the age-old question is, how much backing do you really want to put on here? If I put too much backing on here, I'm gonna have not enough of my mono to cast with. And if I underload the spool, my casting is definitely gonna be inhibited. 0.4 diameter line's kind of tough to cast with anyway. It's a pretty thick line, so I'm gonna wanna fill this to the max and have enough mono that I really don't wanna see the backing on big carp or any other big fish I'm gonna use this for. Now, if I add too little backing, I'm gonna use too much of my main line. If I add too much backing, I'm not gonna have enough main line. So again, it's really important to get that spool diameter or that spool capacity just right. I know for every 5 turns, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, I'm gonna be 1 turn short of a yard. And that number is going to be important. I don't want to be guesstimating. I just want to be repeating it. So when I get to 5, I'm just going to repeat 5 and keep going. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, and that way I know that I'm making up that yard of line per 5 turns. Because again, I only have 28 inches per turn, and 1 yard is 36 inches. So that's how we're gonna do this. Let me show you how it works. So here's my Shimano bait runner, and here is my awesome Berkeley Direct Connect. And you know, if you're interested to find this line, again, I'll put a link of everything in the description below so you could easily find it. But this is really going to be pretty awesome. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to run this through the entire rod, just like I always do. And then I'm just going to tape it to the rod right here. Now remember, this isn't going to be my backing, I should say, right, where I tied the uni knot in other videos. I'm just going to use tape because the bottom of this line is actually, sorry, I'm actually baiting this and you're out of camera there, but the bottom of this line where I tape it is actually going to be the top of my line when I'm fishing. So I'm going to run this through again because I'm going to use the box method that I showed you on a variety of different videos and different segments, and it's going to be great. So here we go. I'm going to flip this open. That's always a key part. Always flip this open before you start spooling. Just going to tape this down with just a piece of tape. So nothing too complicated. So there's my piece of tape right here. Just going to tape it on down. There we go. And that's just some Scotch tape, so it'll be easy when the time comes to take it off, and I'm not damaging the line at all. So, all right, so now we click that forward, and now we'll be ready to reel in. Next up, let's organize this in the box method, which I'll show you right now. So we make sure this is constantly under pressure, and we're gonna take the math out of this, Fish-A-Lots. I don't wanna do the math. I just wanna do some simple counting and be perfectly good with my spools. Now, the preset for this reel, of course, is you wanna tighten this drag down all the way. Tighten it as much as you can. I really don't want to be able to pull any drag out of this, and that will ensure that the line is not twisting when I'm putting it on the spinning reel right here. That would be like the worst thing, is to twist this line as you put it on. It's going to be mess, tangles. It's going to absolutely ruin the spool. All right, now we're ready for the box. Now again, the box method cannot be easier. All you need is a box, a screwdriver, a pair of vice grips, and your fishing line, and that's it. You can have this at anywhere in your house, and that's really all you need. And that's it. You are ready to go. So the vice grips are going to keep this in place. The line's set up perfectly to come right off the top of that spool. So brilliant, just like that. That's how you want it. And then I put a little weight in the bottom there just to make sure the box doesn't fly around. All right, and here we go. So you can tell I have no spool on this line whatsoever. It's connected to my box, right? You can see that bend in the fishing rod right there. That's exactly what I want, because I don't want to be holding this line. I don't want to be burning myself. I don't want to be taking the waxing off the line, anything like that. The idea is I want to get at least 150 of yards on here. So as I turn the spool, okay, I'm going to know where the spool is. It's going to be in front of me right here. So as I make a full turn, there we go. So that was 2 turns right there. Now as I get to 5, that's 2, 3, oh no, I'm sorry, that was 4, 5, I'm gonna repeat it. 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. And what that's doing is, that's because one turn of the reel handle is only 28 inches. So it's not a full yard. It's 0.2 inches short of a rod. So every 5 turns, I'm going to make up for that rod. And if I get up to 150 yards of this, I'm doing really good. If I get 200 on here, I'll be fine. Also very good. I just want to keep track of exactly how much line is going on here, because I don't want to waste any line out of that spool. And then we're going to count the backing, and then we're going to reverse spool this onto the other fishing reel. So let's go again. I'm going to recount 15. 97, 98, 99, 100, 100. All right, now we're gonna stop right there at 100 because I don't have a huge amount of leftover line for my backing. So let's tie it on right now. All right, so not everything always goes expected to plan. This is about 100 turns. So I got about 100 yards of that 0.4 diameter Berkeley direct connect. And you can tell I don't have a whole lot more room for the backing. Now, the reason why I still want to put the backing on is, quite frankly, because I just want to keep as much track of this line as possible. So 100 yards is pretty good. Now, if you're a European Fish-A-Lot out there and you're watching this, you're going to be asking yourself, why did you just go with like a 6,000 size rod, or even bigger, like a big spool rod, you know, so I could cast a long distance and get even more out of this reel? And the reason for that is, again, this is not only going to be a carp fishing rod, but I also use this a lot in my kayak. So I'm going to be fishing in my kayak primarily with this rod, with the bait runner, and I don't fish at great distances. So 100 yards is okay. I was hoping for 150, but 100 yards is okay. I want to put the backing on there because I want to keep it at 100. Also, when it comes time when this mono gets really beat up and frayed, I'm cutting it away, I know that 100 yards of that Berkley Direct Connect is going to be perfect for this spool, and that's what I'm going to re-spool when I get to the backing. The first thing I'm going to put on the backing, I'm going to use a reverse uni knot, and then I'm going to reverse spool this onto my other bait runner, and we're going to see how good that really works. So remember, just 100 turns on this was the final number. So again, I was hoping to get more on there, but you know, it is what it is. So let's get that backing on there and let's do the same thing. All right, so now comes the time to attach your backing, which is going to be my Berkley Trilene Big Game, to my main line, which is going to be my Berkley Direct Connect line. Now, in previous tutorials, I mentioned how great, especially for my ocean gear, how great it is to use an FG knot with this type of connection, mainline connection to mono connection. However, you're dealing with two monos here essentially, so an FG knot's just not going to work. And and then of course, like a Crazy Alberto knot, it's just going to be too big. So a double uni knot is going to be your ticket here. An FG knot simply not going to do it because this is a mono and this is a mono. And even though this is more like a copolymer, there's still a very monofilament type of line. So we're just going to do the good old double uni knot. So again, you have two tag lines, you're going to cross them over, and there you go. So you have one tag line here, one tag line here, and you're just going to start your loop just like that. And now you're going to wrap this 5 to 7 times. Now you grab all your tag ends. So you grab your tag ends, all 4 tag ends on both sides. You start tightening it down, and that is going to be really nice right there. Don't worry about cinching it all the way down. See, that's still kind of a little bit loose there. That's okay, because when the two knots come together, they're going to pull against each other. They're going to tighten right up. Okay, so then next up, you're going to do the mono side. So again, you're going to make a loop just like that, and you're just going to do 5 to 7 wrap. There's your tag end. You grab the tag end, you grab all 4 lines, you pull them tight together just like that. Again, don't worry about making it super tight. You just want the knots to come together a little bit, just like that. And now you take your back line end and your main line end and just going to pull together, and these 2 knots are going to push up against each other just like you see here, and they're going to cinch. And give it a little tight right there, just pull it a little bit, and there you go. That is a perfect double uni knot, as you can see right there. All right, and so now we're going to spool up the Berkley Trilene, the Big Game, as the backing onto the reel, so that then we could reverse spool it. Now, as I start to reel in here, I'm going to do something very important. You see, there's the uni knot right there, the double uni knot's right there. I want to note when that uni knot makes it onto the line right there. So there we go. There's the knot. Okay, made it on right there. You can see that knot in the spool. I want to make note of where that spool handle is, which is right here in front of me, which is super convenient, because that's where I'm going to start counting. That's going to be the most accurate way to determine the correct amount of backing for your line. So I made note of it. It's right over there. It's on the other side of the spool, and my reel's right here. So this is where I'm going to start counting the backing on the line. So I'm going to make the line tight on my box, and I'm going to start reeling. Seven. Look at that bend. Look at that bend in the rod right there. $34, $35. Let's check my spool here. That looks like a nice loaded spool to me. I'm going to get maximum casting out of that right there. So I'm going to stop at 35. So we got 100 and 35. So 100 for the main line, 35 for the backing. I recommend you write that down. I'm going to do that off camera. I'm going to write it on down this way. Don't forget. I think that is going to be perfectly fine right there. That's going to be perfect. Look at that. Look how nice and tight that went on. We're going to do the exact same thing on the reverse spool. So this is going to be the backing and the main line is underneath. And so now it's just time to tie the backing onto our fishing reel here that needs the actual fishing line. This is just a bare bones Shimano Bay Runner 4000 fishing reel, and so now we're going to tie on the backing. So first step always usually helps is click the bail back, and now let's tie on just a classic uni knot. So here's the spooled fishing rod here. I'm going to put this down. I'm going to give myself enough line to work with my other rod here. Now again, I'm going to hook everything up like I'm going to spool it, because we're going to do it just like I showed in previous videos and previous segments, where we're just going to rig this up just like we're fishing, and then we're actually going to spool it under tension. This way I don't have to hold the line, I don't have to add extra pressure, I don't have to do any of that. And all right, fish lads, again, to attach the backing to your reel, I can't recommend the uni knot enough. So basically what you're going to do is give yourself plenty of line to work with. Okay, here's your tag end. You're going to fold that over itself, just like that. You're going to come down the line and you're going to make a loop, just like that. So now you got your tag end right here and your loop, and you're going to pass this tag end through the loop 5 to 7 times, just like any uni knot. So those 2 times. So that's going to be good. Grab that tag end right there, grab the line and grab the loop, and you're going to tighten it all down. Just like that. Beautiful. Don't worry if it doesn't get super tight, that's okay. So I'm not like cinching this by any means, because I need it to cinch on the spool. Now you got this big loop here. What I like to do is I'm going to fold this in on itself just like that. So now I have 2 loops. Now let me introduce Mr. Spool. All right, so now here's our Shimano Bay Runner. There's no line on it. Here's our double looped spool that we just made, and we're just gonna lasso the spool right there and push it all down just like that. So now we have our knot right here, and we have 2 lines right there, and we're just gonna help it along. I'm just gonna push this down with my fingers right over the spool. So again, there's a knot, push it down. Unfortunately, the line is white and the spool is white. Once you get it about at the spool, what I do is I take it and I pull it back and forth like that, and that actually tightens it all the way down on the spool. And take a look. The issue that you don't want is that knot or that line will wrap on the spool. But look, I'm actually turning the spool with the knot. See that? So that is really cinched on there, fishlets. That's what you want right there. That is a cinched down knot. That is the value of the uni knot right there. So we tied a double uni knot and now a uni knot to the spool. So there you go. Now we're ready to do the reverse line technique, or the reverse spooling technique. All right, now we're gonna do the same exact thing we did before. We got my fishing cart, but you could use anything. What we're gonna do, of course, we're gonna loosen this drag up now. We had tightened it before, so now we're gonna loosen it. We're gonna loosen it pretty good so that the line comes off easy, but not so easy that we're not gonna get a tight wrap on the other rod. And that's what the rod really helps with, is absorbs a lot of pressure. Next, we're gonna come over here to our rod in question. We're gonna flip down that bail. All right, and now we're gonna come over to this reel and we're gonna tighten this one all the way down so that the drag isn't gonna come out of this. So there we go. Now that one's nice and tight. Just gonna get a turn on here. Okay, now we're tight. So I already did 10 wraps. Now remember, the backing only takes 35. So I got 10 wraps there. I'm really gonna wanna put a lot of pressure on that line right there to make sure that this line goes on nice and smooth. So I'm gonna actually back this up a little bit. Okay, and so there you have it. Now we're just gonna do the reverse spool right here. And I already had to take a few lines, just get it up tight. And now we're gonna just, you know, spool up the rod. Now this should come out perfect, of course, because we're just reverse spooling it. So now that rod is gonna give me all the line of the previous spool. Backing is gonna go on first, just like this. And we're gonna spool it up and you're gonna see exactly how nice this works. So there we go. Now we're just gonna reel it in. And you don't even have to count on this one, you're just reeling it on this one. So that's kind of nice. And keeping that tension on that rod right there really helps out because it comes out super smooth and super tight on the spool to maximize the amount of line you're gonna get on there. There we go, here comes a double uni right there. You can see it, there's a double uni right there. And it goes. And now we're starting to put on the backing. Or the main line, I should say. Backing is on, main line coming on, and we should stop at that tape. And we'll see how we did when we come out. Perfect. Now we are at the end of the line. Now look at that. Look how amazing that spool came out on the reverse spooling. That is absolutely perfect. All right, now let's count out the other spool and see how good we did. All right, now we're back to our backing. So again, I'm gonna use the uni knot to secure this line to my spool. All I'm gonna do is fold it over, same as before, come up the line, make my loop just like that. And now I'm gonna take this tag end that you see right here and I'm gonna pass it through the loop 5 to 7 times. So 1, that's good enough, it's just the backing. So there you go, tighten that down. That's what you should look like right there. Tighten it down by grabbing all ends. Don't worry if it gets super tight or not. You can do that at the end. And now you have this right here, this big loop. Fold that in on itself, and now you kind of have like a double lasso right there, and you're gonna put that over the line. So let's do that now. Let's introduce Mr. Spool. Click this open. Okay, here's the knot that we just made. We're gonna lasso the line. Hopefully you can see this one a little bit better. Here's our connection. There's our lasso, just connected just like that. Now we're gonna tighten it down. I push it on down, just like that. Oop, came out. Oh, it unraveled. That's all right, we can push it back out, not a problem. That's why you don't stitch that down right there, Fish-a-Lots. We just had a little bit of a mishap and keep the line tight enough while I put it on. That's all right, I like to show you the good, the bad, and the ugly there. We'll just do it again. You have the double line lasso right there. We're gonna push this down just like that. That time it didn't come out. And now when you get to this point, like I showed you before, there's the knot. You're just gonna hold on to that spool and you're gonna pull the line down and up. And that will literally cinch it to the line. It just did it right there. So there's your line now right there. There's your spool. Now watch this. That is not going anywhere. I can move the spool easier than I can move the line, and that is a secured line. So you just click that down, and now you are ready to go. Next up, of course, we're going to attach our line to our box. So we're going to put the line over the screwdriver, just like that. And then we're going to take our vice grips right here, put some pressure on the line, make sure it's cinched. Going to clamp it down, just like that, nice and tight. I'm going to put it down, and now that line is going to come off perfectly off the top. Always remember, you want that line coming off the top right here. So you're going to pick up our rod, right like this, and now we're going to count. So I make note of where my rod handle is, and now I start counting. 1, whoops, see, I forgot a step. See how that twisted right there? I'm actually glad I did that. Always remember your presets on your fishing reel. So your preset is you want to tighten this drag down all the way down. I caught that right at the beginning. If you start twisting your line, or that drag noise starts coming out of your reel when you're fishing, you're twisting this line, and you're gonna have a giant tangled mess at the end of the day. So now I'm gonna know the rod positioning here again. It's gonna be right at the top, and that's gonna be my 1. So 1, 2. 29, 30. There we go, 1 extra turn, and now we have our backing exactly how we had it on the last fishing rod. Now let's cut it off, do the double uni knot to connect this to the Berkley Direct Connect, and we'll be on our way. All right, now we have our Berkley Direct Connect, and we're gonna do the good old double uni knot. So again, my 1 tag end, my other tag end. They're going to go in 2 different directions right here. There we go. I'm going to do my loop 5 to 7 times around the loop. Grab the tag end, grab all the line. It's going to come together, look like that. That is going to be perfect. Make sure you grab the tag end. And there you go. So tighten it down. Don't worry about getting it super cinched down, because it will cinch down once the line comes together. So now we go over to the direct connect side. We're going to make a loop. There we go, same thing. So there's our loop, direct connect side. It's going to be our main line. That's 2. Grab the tag end right there, grab all the line, tighten it all down. There you go. Again, don't worry about cinching it all the way. Now you're going to pull both ends of the line until they come together, and now they cinched perfectly great, just like that. And that is your double uni. So next all we do is we trim the tag lines off. So just make sure it's the tag line, not the main line. Trim it off. Doesn't have to be super close. There we go. All right, now we're ready to spool. This one I want a little bit closer. Now we're ready to spool. All right, we're over to our favorite box. Got a lot of use today. We're gonna take our screwdriver, put it through the box. Now here's the line. I'm gonna turn this label up because I want the line coming off the top of the direct connect. So there we go, put the screwdriver through there. Now it's time for our vice grips. Take the vice grips, put some pressure on the box with the screwdriver, and we are connected, ready to go. Now we got to count 100 wraps or 100 turns of the handle for this spool to be perfectly right. Now again, there's my backing line. So when I reel it on, I do want to make sure I got good pressure on it. So now I want to make note of where the uni knot is going to hit on the reel, because I need to know. Oh, I just missed it. There we go. Okay, so now there's the uni knot. There it goes, right on this side. So now there's the uni knot. You can see it right there. So I need to make note of where my reel positioning is, and it's right there. So that's going to be our first turn right there. 1, 2. And we're just going to keep spooling like that. Now again, keep a look at that rod right there. Look at all that pressure on the rod. That makes sure that this line's going on super tight, as neat as it possibly can, and I don't have to hold the line. Once again. 99, 100. There we go. We just did 100, and that is just as beautiful as the last wraps right there. I definitely got 1/16 of an inch between here and the line right there, and that is absolutely fantastic. So there you go. That's how the reverse spooling works right there. Let's disconnect from the box, and let's compare the two lines right here. And so there you go, Fish-A-Lots, the reverse spooling technique, where we just, we put on the main line first, then the backing, counted it out, and then put on the backing. And that came out really, really awesome. Super happy with that. Gonna get a lot of use out of that line. And now I know I only used 200 yards of that main line of that Berkeley Direct Connect. I'm gonna make a note, gonna slap it on the cover of that thing, and this way I know exactly how much line is left over in that spool. And that's how you do it, Fish-A-Lots. All right, let's move on to the next one. All right, Fish-A-Lots, so this is where the math method can really come into play. So this is a Cast King Spartacus 2, and it's not a huge spool on this reel. It's, again, a really great reel. Take a look at that. Super smooth. You can barely hear it. Love these things. Cast King makes some really good products, and they also make some really good fluorocarbon lines. So this is the Cast King Covert Classic. This is a fluorocarbon. Now, I don't normally recommend just spooling up your reels with fluorocarbon because, quite frankly, it's super expensive, but Cast King actually makes this pretty affordable. For 15-pound test line, I think you're under 20 bucks. Now, what they do though is they sell these spools in lower diameter lines. So basically this spool is meant designed to fit a smaller bait casting reel just like this. So if you want to avoid the headache of having to tie backing line and all that other stuff, you can literally buy a $125 spool of line and just do some basic math to figure out if you need backing or not. So there's absolutely nothing on this box. This is the KastKing Spartacus 2 box, no numbers, no anything, and there's just 10-pound test line written on the bottom of this spool right here, which for 10-pound test you get 140 yards. Well, that kind of stinks because this is 15-pound line with a line diameter of 0.35 diameters, which is not 10-pound test line. Instead, it's more equivalent to the 0.33 12-pound test line. So what that means is we got on the good old Google, and KastKing does list for the Spartacus 2 exactly how much line you can fit on this reel with 12-pound test line. So since this line diameter, again, the most important stuff you can figure out is line diameter, the reel capacity, and inches per turn. So since the line diameter is equivalent to 0.35 millimeters as a line diameter, which is equivalent to 12-pound test line, this says that with 12-pound test line, you can fit 120 yards of mono on this. So perfect. I then look up 12-pound trilene monofilament, and it's 0.33 millimeters, which is almost identical to the KastKing fluorocarbon. So just doing a little bit of Google searching and some math, I know I actually don't need any backing for this reel because this spool will fit perfectly on the KastKing Spartacus 2. So KastKing Covert Classic line on the KastKing Spartacus 2, you got a perfect match, no fuss, no muss, you got yourself a perfect day because now you don't need backing, you don't need to count, you don't need to do anything. Just put the line on the spool and you're good to go. So that's the math method and how effective that could be if you break it down into simple terms and you correlate fluorocarbon to monofilament using the millimeters that fluorocarbon equals, because fluorocarbon is usually thinner in diameter than monofilament. All right, there's a quick little tip for you. If you break that down, you don't have to do any effort whatsoever. I know I fish a lot, so in a previous segment or a previous episode, however you might be watching this video, we spooled all those reels behind me with just lots of different types of fishing line. And we covered the three main important things you need to know how to spool your reels correctly. That is the line diameter you want to use, the reel's capacity, and of course, how to count or how to calculate exactly how much line is going on your reel. So at the end of spooling, you know, you don't look at the spool you bought from the store and you have 50 yards left over, 20 yards left over, and it's basically garbage. You basically have to throw that stuff away and you waste a ton of money doing that. The other things we showed you is different methods you could use for spooling your reels. That's the reverse spooling method, the good old-fashioned flip method, right? Reels that you might be using and the bottom of your reels have never, or the bottom of your line on your reel has never seen the light of day. That's brand new fishing line right there. Just flip it onto whatever reel you want to spool up. And then of course, mathematics, right? You're just going to count how much backing and how much main line you want to put on the spool, and you use all the numbers we just talked about, your reel's capacity, line diameter, inches per turn, and you get the perfect amount on your reel. So now the question becomes, a lot of these reels were meant for inshore fishing. What about deep drop fishing techniques? What if you got these big reels right here meant for offshore fishing, tuna, tilefish, or even things like this, like the ocean jigger, where you're meant just jigging in deep water, wreck fishing, in my case, just fishing at depth for fluke or flounder even. What about these? Does anything change? And the answer to that is really no. The main difference is going to be you're going to want to spool these reels up with as little backing as possible, just so you can put as much braid as possible on these reels. And that is the name of the game with deep drop fishing or offshore fishing, is you want line capacity. That is the main benefit of having big reels like this and reels like this that have deep pits in them. These are deep pit fishing reels where you could just hold a ton of line and that's it. You're going to be fishing at 150 feet, 200 feet. You know, you're going to be catching possibly fish that are going to take massive runs on you, and you need the line capacity to deal with both the depth of your presentation and of course the line that the fish is going to take out from you or take away from you when you do hook up into some of these massive fish. So that's the name of the game for these, is just getting as much line on here as you possibly can. I'm going to show you exactly how to do that. And of course, a misconception that people do have with deep drop fishing is that you need giant reels in order to do that. And this is a Quantum Accurus, a reel I've been using for forever for deep drop fishing, and it is just such an awesome reel. Now, you might be asking, well, this is really a bass fishing reel. How are you using it for deep drop fishing? And well, it's because I'm maximizing that spool count or that spool capacity with my braid. And I'm gonna show you that right now. Now, this reel has 30-pound braid on it, and I'm using it for fishing for fluke or flounder, depending where you live in the country, up to about 150 to 160 feet. And this has been doing okay for me, but that 30-pound line is costing me because in heavy currents, even braid is catching in that current, and I'm having trouble getting light bucktails down to the bottom. So I want to reduce this to 20-pound test line, which is a 0.23 millimeter line diameter, which this 30-pound test line is 0.38 millimeter line diameter. And that is actually a huge difference when you're talking about 150 feet of line that could catch the current on the way down to those fluke. So this line is perfectly good. There's nothing wrong with it. I don't want to waste it. So I'm going to use the good old flip method and take my 30-pound test line on 2 Accurus baitcaster reels. I'm going to flip it onto 2 older spinning reels that I have. I'm going to spool this up with my desired 20-pound braided test line. So we're going to use all the same methods we used in previous videos. We're going to use a good old box. We're going to use the flip. We're going to not waste any of this line, and I'm going to show you to maximize this line for deep drop, fluke, flounder, or whatever fish might be living deep that you want to get after with a good old-fashioned bass baitcasting reel. This is a Quantum Accurus. Absolutely love it. Let's get into it. And all right, before we do the flip method on my Quantum Accurus to my 2 spinning reels here, so I got 2 Quantum Accurus. They're going to be flipped onto 2 spinning reels. This is going to be the first one, and this is going to be an Okuma Avenger AB50. So this is a 5000 series reel or size reel. This thing is absolutely fantastic. I've been using this for over 20 years. This reel is 20 years old. No joke, still in the arsenal, still going strong, and doesn't break the bank. I absolutely love these Okumas, and look how much I've used this line. Look at the gap there between the line on the spool and the end of the fishing reel spool right here. I mean, usually I like to keep this to 1/4 of an inch just so I know when to respool this, and this line owes me absolutely nothing. Check that out right there. We're at almost a 1/2 inch on that spool right there. I don't know if you could see it due to the camera zooming in or not, but almost a 1/2 inch right there. That is amazing. And now with this line capacity the way it is, I'm really suffering in my casting ability. So this line here is not going to be salvageable. It's about 50 or 60 yards left, I would say. So I'm going to show you the easiest way to unspool your fishing reels and the most fun way and, you know, ecologically safe way or environmentally safe way to dispose of your line. It's going to be super fun. It's going to be environmentally safe, and it's going to be super easy and time saving for me to remove this line. So I'm going to show it to you now. It's going to be great, and we're going to prep this for the good old flip method for my Quantum Accurus. So 30-pound test line is going to go on this, and I'm going to show you how to remove this line first. And the next reel up here is going to be a Shimano Stratic, and this is really a great reel. So first step when doing this is I took a piece of hanger, and you can tell this is kind of burnt right here, and that's because we're going to literally burn the fishing line. And so all you do is you take a power tool, good old Black & Decker, right? And you're going to screw this, you're just going to screw the hanger into your tool right here. And this is going to be your tool you're going to use to basically unspool your fishing line. That's if you turn it the right way first, of course. So make sure it's in there straight. I do like using the neck part of the hanger, but you're gonna just secure that down just like that. So now you're gonna wrap your line around this piece of the hanger, and as you spin it, the line's gonna go onto the spool just like that. There's our fishing line coming out of the spool on the ground. I'm basically just gonna wrap it. Doesn't matter how much you wrap it on there, it doesn't really matter, just so long as it spins. Get a couple of turns on there. There you go. Now you're ready to take off all the line on this reel right here. And again, the easiest way to take your fishing line off your fishing reel so you could re-spool it is just a hanger, putting a Black & Decker right here, and just hit the tool, and off comes your fishing line just like that. And look at that, now you're all the way down to the end of the spool, and we're gonna get to the most fun and the most environmentally friendly way to get rid of all this fishing line. And I'm gonna show you that right now. It's gonna be great. All right, now that we got all the line off the reel, we're just simply gonna give this a cut. There you go, the line's completely free off the Black & Decker, and now here comes the fun part. All right, so once you remove the hanger from your Black & Decker, go ahead and put that Black & Decker away like we just did. And now always get a tool for this. So I'm gonna use just a pair of pliers here and just gonna grab the end of the hanger. And the reason why you want to use a tool is because we are going to burn this fishing line. And there is braid underneath this mono here. And braid, once it gets going, it just turns into like liquid hot magma. And it is the most environmentally friendly way to get rid of fishing line. So here's our braid. And now for the fun part. You're just gonna light that puppy on fire. Now, the key to lighting this on fire is once it gets going, just let it go and get out of the way. Just let it burn. The key is to get to that backing, just like that. Mono does not burn that well, but braid really gets going. Just like that, it just gets burning. So right there, it turns into a big pile of liquid hot magma, and you just kind of want to get out of the way of it so you don't burn yourself. Now let's say you despooled your line and you didn't use the Black & Decker, you didn't use a tool, you don't have a hanger, whatever the case might be. What literally you can do is just grab a stick right here and just wrap your braid around the stick the best you can. Again, this is going to be the best way to get rid of fishing line. And there you go, so you got your braid all nice and wrapped up. Now, braid will absolutely burn. I don't know what they put in this stuff makes it so flammable, but this is by far the best way to get rid of braid, and that is just burning it. So once you get it going, it will literally just keep on burning. Lighter works really well. If you want to have some fun, you could use another tool. That's it right there. So now that it just starts burning, it'll just burn until there's nothing left. And this next piece here, if you're gonna have fun with it, why not just have fun with it? This is what I use to like burn weeds and stuff like that. And yeah, let's just use it to burn some fishing line. So here you go. This is gonna be fun. Light this puppy up. Oh yeah. Yeah. Let's introduce our fishing line. And just roast it. Once that gets going, that absolutely just keeps burning. And once that braid starts to burn, I mean, it just goes. It's like liquid hot magma, and it will just burn itself out. So you don't even have to worry about it. And there you go. You just saw it. I'm out of braid. I'm going to drop this mono down, and that mono is just going to also keep on burning until that burns itself out. So just an overall great way to take care of your fishing line. So next step for this Okuma Avenger is to put on the backing. I actually got a little overzealous when burning the line. It had backing on there, it was good. I really didn't know, again, this reel is like 15 years old, so I really didn't know what kind of backing I put on there like 20 years ago. So just as good. I love using Andy's monofilament, super cheap, super affordable. Not cheap, but affordable, and you could just get massive spools. This is Berkeley Trilene Big Game, same thing. You get massive 650 yard spools, 900 spools. This one's 900, this one's 650, and just excellent choices. So I'm gonna go with the Trilene just because 20-pound monofilament. And of course, our first step here is to just spool up your rod like you were going fishing. So that's exactly what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna rig this up exactly as I would for anything else, for me spooling up my line. So, all right, so I got that spooled. Always make sure you click the bail back before you start tying. Worst case scenario, you could just, if you ever do tie the line on like this with the bail shut, all you do is unscrew this and remove the spool and put it back. And that's the easy way to do that. So we're gonna use the uni knot, of course, because love me some uni knots. Actually, the beauty of the uni knot here, you can either wrap it around the reel like this, or you could just do it freely like this. You could simply just fold over the line just like this, make a loop. There you go, just like that. Take your tag end right here and just gonna pass it through that loop. I'll make sure it's not twisted first. And just pass it through that loop 5 to 7 times. You got yourself a uni knot. So there you go. I'm just gonna do that. 5, that'll do it just fine. This is just for the backing. So you're gonna end up with something like that. Looks really good. You tighten it down. Should look like that when you tighten it. There you go. Don't worry about cinching it down. All right, now you just created this one big loop right here. Just make another loop right here. So now you have 2 loops plus your uni knot. Fit that over the reel like that. And you're basically just lassoing the reel. Now what I do is I use my fingers here to just kind of push the knot down a little bit, get into position. And then when the knot is about right there on the uni knot, I just simply grab the spool and I tighten the knot down side to side, just like that. And you'll be amazed at how tightly that cinches down to the reel itself. There you go. So just side to side motion. If you move the bail out of the way, that could actually help a little bit. And there you go. Now that is a tightened line around the spool right there. Click the bail down, just like that. And now you're ready to reel it in. And that line is not going anywhere. So I'm just gonna clip off the tag end and then start spooling on my backing using the box method. So just gonna make the clip. Not concerned about how close I make it, it's just backing. And now, let's hook it up to a box and get some backing on. And now possibly the easiest way ever to put line on your spinning reel, you just take a screwdriver, pass it through the box, just like that. And then we're just gonna take our spool right here. Here's our screwdriver. Take our spool, put it on the box, and then our handy dandy little vice grip pliers here, push it down onto the spool to get some tension. Click it in place just like that, and you are ready to spool. Again, as always, most important piece to this is making sure the line is coming off the top of the spool, okay? Not from underneath and not from the side, but off the top. That's gonna ensure you're gonna get no tangles in your reel right there. So now we're ready to start spooling up our backing. All right, so here's our Okuma Avenger, and we're just gonna start spooling it up. Now, since I'm using the flip method with the Quantum Accurist, I'm not all that much concerned about the numbers here. What I basically wanna do is use that technique I showed you before, where I just wanna spool this with enough line where I have about 1/4 of an inch from here to the end of the spool. That way, if I have to change my braid again, I know that I can fit about 150 to 170 yards once I get to this backing right here. So you can tell I got a bend in my rod right there. This is a ugly stick, so as long as you got some tension on there and you spool it in, look how tight those wraps are gonna come when you're spooling it on. So I'm not gonna count this one because it really doesn't matter. I'm just gonna put as much of that line as I can from the Quantum Accurist on here, and I'm just gonna spool it up to get some backing on there and get it on as tight as I can so that basically you get as much main line as I can from that Quantum Accurist. I'm just gonna stop when I get enough backing on here and measure 1/4 of an inch. That actually looks pretty good right there. You can tell it doesn't take much. I'm gonna get my measuring tape out. This is inches. I'm gonna fold over. I got right there, and if I am to that point right there, that 1/4 of an inch mark, I am good to go. So a little less than 1/4 right there. So I'm gonna keep spooling up a little bit, just a little bit more. This reel takes a lot of line. They're gonna go a little bit more. Doesn't take much to fill these up, I gotta say. That's why you can lose track of this so easily and waste just a ton of money in fishing. Let's see that again. There you go, perfect. So that is about 1/4 right there. That is really good, actually. I'm really happy with that. Just a couple of turns, and bam, I'm right there at 1/4. So that's it for my backing. Now I'm gonna do the flip method with my Quantum Accurist, and I'll have this fully spooled, fully ready to go. Next part, of course, you're gonna have to hook up our Quantum Accurist in order to do the flip with the Okuma. So let's do that now. And the best way to do this, in all seriousness, is just gonna be the double uni knot, because this is gonna be the backing for my spinning reel. I don't plan to get to the backing. Now for the deep drop reels, I'm gonna use the FG knot, and I'm gonna show you exactly why that is and why knowing the FG knot is so important, especially for this, because that knot is super thin and super, super strong, and is the best of both worlds when you're connecting lines that are going on your reel. So again, I'm not going to worry too much about this one here. It's just a double uni. So tighten that all down, perfect. You're not going to be able to see this too well on the GoPro, but again, I have a lot of tutorials on this. I've done it previously with these reels, so if you want to take a look, go ahead and click on the links for my other videos, and there you go. So that's a double uni right there. I'm going to tighten that one down. That's the mono side. Don't worry if it doesn't cinch. See, I don't know if you can see that. See, it's not all the way cinched down. Don't worry about it. It's going to cinch perfectly fine when you pull these two knots together right here. Take a look. See, they're coming together, and now they're cinched down. There you go. That is the uni knot all cinched down, ready to go. That is going nowhere, and that's perfect for a spinning reel application of line-to-line connections. I'm going to trim up these tabs, and then we're going to do the flip and see how much line we actually get on that Okuma. Next step, of course, is wheeling out your cart or a rod holder or whatever you got available, and we're going to do the good old flip. There we go. Now both these rods are now connected, or these reels are now connected. This Quantum Accuracy is connected to the Okuma. I'm going to put it on here now. The key piece here is a bait casting reel, so I don't want to just hit this and spool it because it's going to give me a horrible backlash. I'll be here all day. So just want to lessen that drag up a little bit until it's fairly easy to pull line out of the spool. That's pretty good right there. That's going to be enough tension to where I can get a tight spool on that Okuma. So that's what I'm going to do. See that? I don't have to put too much pressure on it, but it's enough where it's going to be tight enough to get that line on tight onto the Okuma side. And all right, so as I was saying previously, I'm not too concerned about counting or anything like that. I'm just going to see how much I could get onto the spool via the Accuracy. And there you go. So I got the bend in the rods right there. The line's coming off. I'm good to go. I'm going to keep the rod tips up just like this. And there's the Accuracy right there on the fishing cart. And you can tell how smooth and nice that braid is going on there. And we're just going to keep doing that. Right, I'm letting the rods do the work, essentially. I'm letting the rods get all that tension on this line so I don't have to hold it. I'm not stripping the braid if it's waxing or anything like that. I'm not damaging anything. I'm literally just reeling it all in as tight as possible because I actually have it under pressure. You're gonna be pretty impressed with how much line those things can hold if you do this method just right and keep everything under pressure. And we're just gonna use minimal backing on that one. This one's 1/4 inch backing. And here we go, fish lots. Here's the FG knot right there for the backing on that Quantum Accuracy, and we are in. So look at that, that is almost a fully spooled 5000 series spinning reel from a little tiny Quantum Accuracy bass fishing bait caster, and I'm going to show you exactly how I was able to get so much big line on such a small reel right there for deep drop fishing, and it's going to be great. I'm going to show you exactly how I do it. So this is all spooled up. Let me show you how to do the Quantum Accuracy for that deep drop offshore type of fishing, or just deep water fishing. I use the same rods for catfishing deep in the Potomac and other river systems as well. So let's get into it. And all right, fish lots, so I want you to take a look at the backing right here on this Quantum Accuracy. So I just removed all the braid and I got to the FG knot, and now it's this much backing. Now look how little backing is actually on the spool right here. Look at that. That's it. That's as much backing as I'm going to use for these. And again, the reason why is because I want to put as much braid as possible on this line. So let's get some more on there. I just took some off. And so that's about it. The backing on this spool is basically just covering the base of the spool, so the braid just has something to bite into. Now, the other thing we got to talk about that's going to be different from deep drop spooling to what we were doing previously is this guy right here, and that is the FG knot. Now, the FG knot is absolutely essential to this. Now, that FG knot is going to be so important because of this right here. This is going to be a level wind. Now, with these reels, that level wind is super, super narrow. And so the only knot that really goes through there without any great issues is that guy right there, that FG knot. And that is the difference between the uni knot, the Alberto knot, the Albright knot, is those knots are all going to be a lot thicker than this FG knot, and this FG knot is really going to be essential. A, is going to be an extension of your backing, so if you ever do get to your backing, you know you're good to go because it's just such a strong knot. And then B, it's going to be able to go through that level wind so easy. So the FG knot is really essential to know for these deep drop situations and all these reels. So for deep drop fishing, I'm always using the FG, and for the inshore fishing where I'm never really going to see the backing, I always tend to use the uni knot. So I'll show you how to tie the FG to your backing, and we'll spool this up as quick as we can. And now the other important point I want to make here for spooling up these reels for deep drop fishing is, again, I buy my spools in bulk. So this is a 500 yard, 20-pound braid. This is just Power Pro, and you know, I still want to know how much is going on here. All right, so now if you take a look at the quantum accurate specs, which is just so important, we know the inch per turn is 29 inches, so that means that we're still about 0.2 yards short every turn of a yard. So I just can't count one turn, 1 yard. So for every 5 turns, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, I'll recount the 5th turn so that I make up for that 29 inches. 36 inches is a full inch per turn equals a yard. So that's how I do it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, repeat 5, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, repeat 10. And by the time I'm done spooling, I'll have counted for 1 turn, 1 yard. So I'll know exactly how many yards go on the spool. The other thing I want to pay attention to, of course, is the capacity. So for 12-pound test line, okay, I could get 135 yards. Now, if you look at Power Pro, this is 6-pound diameter equivalency to braid, which is 0.23 millimeters. Now, I have a 500 yard spool here, and what I want to do is I want to get as much line out of this as possible. So I'm going to spool on about 170 yards, which is going to be great according to Quantum Accurist, because I know that 6-pound diameter line is half of 12, which means I could double the amount of yards right here that I could fit. So 135 yards doubled is a 170, and so I'm going to put 170 yards of Power Pro onto that spool using that counting method, and that means that I'm going to spool up 2 Quantum Accuracies. With this, that's going to come up to what, 340 yards, which means I'll have about 160 yards left over of this spool where I could spool yet another fishing reel. And that's the value of knowing exactly how much line is going on each reel, because at the end of spooling 2 Quantum Accurists, I'll still have more than enough line to spool another spinning reel or another baitcaster or whatever I may want to use with 20-pound test line. So that's a goal. We're going to put 170 yards on 2 Quantum Accurist. I know the inch per turn. I know how to count them. I know I'm going to get 170 on each reel, and I'm going to have about 160 left over for whatever I want to do. All right, let's get going. And the beauty is the backing's already on here, so I don't have to redo that. I'm just going to tie an FG knot, and then I got to count my turns to make sure I know exactly how much is going on there, and we'll be done. All right, now here's our braid, okay, our 20-pound braid, not huge braid. There's plenty of misconceptions out there about the FG knot and how hard it is to tie, and well, it's just not accurate. This is actually a really easy knot to tie if you get some practice with it, and if you have poor vision, this is actually one of the easier knots to tie because you can do it by feel. So first, you're just going to wrap the line over itself, right, like so many of our beginning knots, and you're going to wrap it around your fingers just like that. All right, so here you go. So you're creating tension on the braid with your fingers right here. So you don't need to wrap it around your toe or your teeth or anything like that. Then you're gonna take the mono and just gonna make your first wrap. I'm holding the mono here with my right hand. I'm gonna make the wraps and secure it with my left hand. So here we go. First wrap is gonna be underneath, just like that. Second wrap is gonna be the opposite, just like that. And that's it. That is the FG knot. You just keep making the wraps over and over again, and your magic number here is 22 wraps. So just side to side, 22 wraps, and you're good. And you just use your middle finger there to wrap it. So even if you can't see that well, also it helps to keep track of it. So even if you can't see that well, this knot does not require a whole lot of eyesight or anything really. It's just feel. So you see, I'm just grabbing it and I'm just looping it, and you could tie this knot easily under 60 seconds. And you know, I'm just going to speed it up right here. I don't know how many wraps that is because I'm talking and doing this at the same time. So I'm going to do more than less just as a precaution, but you really don't want to do too many knots either. So the strength of this knot is really the wraps inside the knot are even, and spread the weight of the knot evenly. You see that? I was getting wrapped up. You can see how nice those wraps are starting to look here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Let me lower it so you guys can see it. You don't want to do too many wraps, right? Because the strength of this line comes from the even distribution of the braid biting into that mono. So, and you don't want to overlap the wraps because the braid can bite into itself. You just want to really take this kind of slow, do this right, and count 22 times. So now what you do is, this is another thing you're going to hear a lot of misconceptions about on the YouTubes, is you're going to just cinch down these knots. You're just going to secure these knots with 2 half hitches. Okay, so first we're going to do interlocking half hitches, which turns into a clove hitch, if you didn't know that. And you're going to wrap it around both the mono and the braid main line. So the first one will be around the knot like this. I'm going to use, well, I'm not going to use my teeth because then you won't be able to see it. Typically I use my teeth, but you're just going to cinch that down and tighten it up. So using your teeth is way better because you won't get that. There you go. And there's your first half hitch. And now you're going to do your second. So I'm going to do the opposite way because this makes it a clove hitch. It's just a little bit more secure. If you forgot which way you did it, don't worry. It's not going to make or break the knot at this point. Basically, the only purpose of this is to secure the wraps for you to tighten it. There you go. There you go. So 2 of these is just fine. Some people like to do 4. The folks that are telling you to do 180, 6, 8, 10, it's just nonsense. You don't have to do that. So the next part you have to do, and this part gets tricky. I don't have anything to wrap my hands around, so this is going to hurt quite a bit. I recommend you doing this with a glove or a shirt or something, but you're going to have to tighten this knot down. Now this is the essential part of this knot. As you tighten it down, you can see it's tightening already right there, and braid hurts a lot. So I am in a lot of pain here from the braid because it's cutting into me. So that's why it's good to use a shirt. I didn't think I had to do it, but I'm trying to do it slowly so you could see it as well. And you can see the braid starting to bite into the mono. Now you can visually see it. I don't know if the camera is picking it up, but visually seeing that braid bite into it is the key. Once that braid bites into that as evenly as possible, whew, boy, that hurts, that braid. That is how you know you did a good job, and that knot is not going to come undone. And look at my hand right there. I am putting a lot of pressure on that. Look at that. That is how much pressure you need to put on that to make sure that cinches down. If you kind of lackadaisical there, you know, you didn't put your big boy boots on this morning to make that kind of indentation in your hands and possibly cut yourself, you know, you're not going to get a good strong knot out of it. Or you could just be smart and get a t-shirt or something and wrap your hand in it. But that's it. That's the FG knot. Now I'm going to show you a trick. This is probably the best trick ever to the FG. And you have your half hitches there. I don't trust those half hitches all that much. So I'm going to fold my line back and I'm going to cut away this mono at this point. So here we go. I'm going to cut that mono as close as I can to that wrap. So there we go. I'm going to cut it as close as I physically can. That's about as close as you could get. So now you're going to do a reverse uni knot, a whipping knot, or what's called a risotto knot. They're all the same knots. Now again, the value of the uni knot, right? So you're going to make your loop just like you would any uni knot. Let's see if I can get this excess line out of here so you could actually see it. So here's your loop. So you have something like that, and now you're gonna wrap it. So just like a uni, you can do it 5 times. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And now I'm gonna pin that end to the knot itself. So here's the tag end, I'm gonna pin it. And now I'm gonna reverse wrap the knot. So 1, 2, and this is why they call it a whipping knot or a reverse uni knot. It's just because you're reversing the wraps. See, just like that. And when you get to a point, this point right here, where you have even number of wraps. Oh, I need one more. There you go, that point right there where the line is coming neatly out of the loop right here, you're done. Now what you do is grab the line like that, grab the tag end, because you don't want the wraps to overlap themselves, and start pulling. So now you're gonna get something like this, and see if you pull it down and you start getting a loop right there, just pull it back out, keep pulling that line down nice and neat until the risotto finish or the uni knot finish is complete. See that? Okay, so now we got it like that, and now we're gonna tighten it down, and now we're gonna give it a good pull here. A good pull here. Make sure the knot is cinched. Now what this does is, this gives you a ramp. Like I said, the level wind on those Quantums or any baitcasters you may have is really small. So this right here gives you that extra little ramp right there. I don't know if you can see it, but that little ramp right there is just so important because that'll come in and out of that level wind so smooth. And that is really why you want the FG knot. Now, the only thing left to do here at this point is to cut the excess. I don't worry about how close you cut this one. It really doesn't matter. That uni knot or whipping knot or risotto knot's not going anywhere. There you go. And if you really want to get in depth with it, you could even burn the end of it, but that is it. That is the final product, the FG knot. Now you're ready to spool up. So there you have it. That is the FG knot, and that is really what I recommend for this deep drop fishing. So I not only connect it for the backing, this way it could actually fit through the level line. This is by far the narrowest knot that you could tie. Well, this and the PR knot is. Only the PR knot you have to use a tool. But I'm also going to attack this or attach the FG knot to my Top Shot, my leader materials. Anytime I got to reel this in and out of the guides continuously, this is really the knot I want to go with, and this is it. So that's why the FG knot is so important for this deep drop fishing. And now that we got this all set up, let's go ahead and put our spool to the box, the good old box method, and we'll spool it up. You know, another thing I would like to note, just with this FG knot, notice, I didn't have to keep the line in my teeth. I'm not rigged up to the pole yet. This works just great, this method I showed you, with just having loose line. So I had loose mono right here for the backing and loose main line on the spool. So let's spool it up and see how we do. Okay, once again, the good old box method. You're just gonna take your screwdriver, you're gonna put it through the box, just like that. You're gonna take your spool, you're gonna poke that through the screwdriver. I like to put it in an area where I don't screw up how much test line it is. Then we're gonna take our trusty pair of vice grips right here, and we're just gonna put some pressure on it. Oh yeah, that's gonna be nice and tight. And we are ready to go. As always, the important feature here is this line needs to come off the top of this spool right here. Don't have it peeling off sideways or underneath. Getting it on top is the key piece of this whole equation. Now we're ready to spool up our Accurus fishing rod. And all right, so now it's time to spool up our Accurus, our Quantum Accurus for deep drop fishing, for fluke fishing offshore. And just take a look at that. That is the backing. Again, I just get about one wrap around the spool here. That's it. You can still see the spool through the mono right here. That's exactly what I want. And I got an FG knot, so it goes through that level wind right here, so I don't have any issues with knots getting hung up in a level wind right here. So let's spool it up. Again, I'm gonna count. Oh, first of all, you gotta make sure it's not taking, there we go. So every 5 turns, once I get the braid on, so okay, I'm gonna make note of where that FG knot just went through the spool there. So it's right there. So I'm gonna count from here. Every 5, I'm gonna repeat 5. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. And the reason why I'm doing that is because I want to count 170 turns to make sure I have exactly the right amount of line on there. All right, this way I could reuse that 500 yard spool for another reel at the end of our 2 Quantum Accurus. So I'm going to spool 2 of these up, 170 yards spool or a reel, and I'll have enough left over on that spool over there because that's 500 yards. So all right, let's count it. 1, Uh-oh. Okay, so small little issue here. I'm gonna actually tighten up. Oh, my vice grip slipped. See, good thing to keep an eye on this. See this? The vice grips I clamped them down too far off the spool. So we're gonna have to fix that because when I was reeling, I wasn't getting it tight on the spool, and that's super important. So, you know, not a problem. If you do something like that, just do it again. So again, hold the spool super tight, clamp down the vice grips just like that because you wanna have tension on this spool. All right, there we go. So I got the pull. I'm pulling on the screwdriver here, and I'm gonna cramp it down just like that. And now, you know, let's test it out here. Make sure it's tight, and that is okay. So now that's going to be some tension. I got to put some force on there. That's going to be good. So I clearly lost count there, so I'm just going to redo it. All right. So once again, I'm going to make note of where the FG knot meets the spool right there. You can see it right there, and that's where the spool location is. So that's where I'm going to reel it in from. Okay, now once again, you can see that bend in that rod right there. That's super important, and you can see that spool connected to the box, and we are in business. So I'm going to keep going. There you go, Fisher Lots. That is on there as tight as can be. That is a perfectly wound spool right there, ready to go offshore flounder fishing. Let's cut this off. I'm really happy with that. That is excellent. Excellent line lay. Just gonna cut this here. This here is really excellent line lay right there. That is absolutely perfect. Of course, I just reeled it in though, but really happy with that. All right, let's do the other one. Same exact process. Well, again, another 5000 series sized reel, just like the Okuma. So take a look here. You're gonna see this is about 1/4 of an inch on the line right here, right on that Stratic. And so it's about time to change this. I could probably get a little more out of this line, but you know, why even bother with it? It's about time to change it. So we're just gonna spool it up with almost brand new line from that Quantum Accuracy. It'll be 30-pound braid going on here. Again, I like to keep it to about that 1/4 of an inch between the spool here and the edge of the spool here. That's when you really know it's time to change. And this Shimano Stratic is just about there. So this reel will also be receiving the Quantum Accuracy 30-pound braid, using the flip method, of course. Same exact thing. We're gonna take this line off. We're gonna dispose of it the fun way by burning it. Again, just the best possible way to do it. It's easy to get the line off, and it's super fun to burn it, and it's safe for the environment. So we're gonna do that. We're gonna tie the spool on from the other Accuracy. We're gonna flip it. This will come out, I'm sure this will come out just fine. This is another 5000 series reel, and I got that 30-pound braid just wrapped on there. So I'm sure it's gonna come out great. So let's go ahead and get this despooled, and we'll do the exact same thing, flip, and then I'll put 170 yards of that Quantum Accuracy, of that 20-pound Power Pro right there that we just spooled the other Quantum Accuracy with, and then we'll be ready to go for both our spinner reels, as well as our two spooled up, I'm sorry, I can't get my words out, Quantum Accuracy that we could go offshore fluking and whatever else we want to catch in an offshore environment. So all right, let's get it. All right, so the best possible way to get rid of your spool or get your line off your spool if you want to discard of it, this right here, just a Black & Decker, and this is just a piece of a hanger right here that I took apart. I'm just gonna wedge that in there, tighten it up. You can tell it's all black and nasty. It's because I already did this once or twice. Then you're gonna take, this is a Shimano Stratic, awesome reel, and we're just gonna take the line off of this. So there we go, get it going here just a little bit. Turn it upside down just like that. Now you're gonna take your line, you're gonna wrap it through here, nothing crazy. Just take a little wrap it around the other side, just like that. And now when you spin it, that's it. Now you're gonna get that going. Now just take a look how easy this is gonna be. There you go, and we're in business. And there you go, now we hit the backing. Not gonna take off the backing because I need that for my other spool, but there you have it. Now we got to do the fun part and dispose of this. All right, now that we got this big wad of braid right here, let's go ahead and take it out. All right, you're done with your Black & Decker. Grab a pair of pliers right here. Just gonna grab the end. So I got it secured with some pliers. Now comes the fun part. We're just gonna go ahead and good old-fashioned burn it. So there we go. And once this braid gets burning, it just burns and burns and keeps burning, and it turns into basically like molten lava, and it's super fun to watch, actually. So we just gotta get it going a little bit here. There it goes. I think it's gonna go. And there it goes. So now you're just gonna literally let this burn itself out like a candle. There you go, fish lots. All that braid is burnt off, and all you're left with is one burnt coat hanger. Now for this next setup, I'm not even gonna take the Power Pro out of here. I know that's what I'm gonna be spooling it with, so I'm just gonna tie an FG knot. And even though this reel is super, super old, it's so nice to have been doing this right for a long time, because I actually forgot if I'd actually put backing on here or not. And I didn't get overzealous this time, and the Stratic is keeping its backing on there. This is definitely at least 20-pound monofilament. So I'm going to keep that on there, and now it's just time to tie a double uni knot to our braid attached to the Quantum Accuracy, and then fill this thing up with literally as much line as it'll take off that Quantum Accuracy. And I think it'll be all of it, because this is a 5000 and we just spooling up with that little tiny bass fishing baitcaster reel. So the backing is all set up with the mono. Now it's just time to set it all up. So again, that is a huge advantage when you have the backing, because as soon as you're getting ready to swap out your line, as soon as you get to the backing, you're done, tie it back on, and you're at least gonna get 150 yards on here. I'm probably gonna get a little bit more because of the way I spooled the Accuracy, which I showed you before. But let's get it, and let's see how much we get on this Stratic. All right, my second Accuracy, and we're gonna, again, rig this up like we were going to go fishing. All right, so my Stratic is now ready for the double uni knot. Okay, here we go, my two rods. Again, the double uni cannot be easier. The two tag ends are gonna go in opposite directions. So here's the mono, here's the braid. Opposite directions. I'll do the mono first this time. Just gonna make a loop, just like that. Gonna pass the line through the loop, one. I'm gonna do 5 times. I'm not gonna get crazy with it. 1, 2, 3. Oop, run out of range there for the camera. 3, 4, and a 5. All right, now you're gonna tighten that down. Looks something like that. There you go. Don't worry if this knot is not super cinched down yet. It will be. There it is. There's your first knot right there. And then we're gonna do the same on the braid side. Nothing to it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Again, if you do 5 on one side, do double the wraps on the other. There you go, or something like that. Tighten that all down, just like that. And now the two knots are going to come together. There you go, give it some pressure. There you go, and it's cinched down. That is the double uni knot right there. Super easy. All right, time to trim off the tag ends, and we'll spool it up. Right, there's my rods. I'm gonna stick one into a rod holder of something. So again, this is just gonna be my fishing cart. All right, and as always, you wanna loosen this up so that the line can come out freely. I'll tighten it up a little bit. There you go, that's about good. You want it to come out free, but you don't wanna have to rip it out. So that's about good. Come over here, Shimano Stratic. Let's get it tight. All right, there's our first wraps of braid right there, and we're ready to go. I mean, the greatest thing about reeling under pressure like this is just how nice and neat that braid goes on the spool. I mean, it just goes on tight the first time. You don't have to worry about overlaps or overwrapping or tangles or nothing. You just got it under constant tension the whole time. I don't have to worry about holding it, grabbing it, doing anything crazy. You can tell my two rods are doing all the work up there, like tip to tip almost. And you can see right there on the spool, just coming out super, super neat. There it is, there's the FG knot. Look at that, that is a perfectly spooled Shimano Stratic right there. That is absolutely perfect. That's it, that's about a 1/16 of an inch right there. From the top here to the top of the spool here. I know you probably can't see it all that well because of the glare or whatever, but that is outstanding right there. Okay, once again, the FG knot cannot be easier. So here's your braid right here. I mean, you can do it anywhere. I'm literally doing it on a patio chair, right? Just so I have some background so I can show you the knot here. And here it is. So basically I'm just gonna take it, wrap it around my fingers just like that. And then with my middle fingers, I'm just gonna create the tension with the line back there like you can see right there. I'm just gonna make a loop just like you always do. Okay, just like that. Now you're gonna start wrapping about 5 to 7 times. So okay, you're gonna now take the tag end right here and pinch it against the knot, just like that. And now this is the reverse part. Now you're gonna reverse uni knot it. So 1, there you go. So now that knot is ready when all those wraps came out and you're left with something like this. So now what I do is I grab those wraps because I don't want to move it anywhere, and I just pull on the tag end right there, and you see it's all gonna cinch down right there. And once it starts cinching down, I want to just kind of guide it with my fingers right there. See that? Gonna pull it all tight right like that. And there you go. That is the reverse uni knot. And there you go. And now that really is a ramp right there to make your line going through your guides or anywhere else super smooth, especially if you're using a level line. This is going to be super, super important. All right, there's everything hooked up to the box just like we had before. No reason to remove it. And now we're just going to spool up our Accurist and we are set. So again, this is going to be 170 turns. Pre-spool maintenance here, just make sure that's all cranked down. Now again, I want to make note when that FG knot meets the line here, because I got to know where the reel is. Oh, there it is. Okay, so there's the FG knot. All right, there's my first turn, and that's pretty nice. It's straight down. So this is going to be, it's a straight down is going to be my counting, and so I got to count 170 turns. Again, every 5th turn I got to recount because I'm 0.2 yards short with every turn of a yard. So that's how I know 170 yards are going to get on this spool. Now look at that bend on that rod, by the way. That is how you really get this on tight. 13, 14, 15, 16. I can do another 50. Whew. We are done, and look at that. That is, again, a perfectly wrapped Quantum Accurist right there. You cannot beat that. That is absolutely perfectly spooled on there, and I am ready for some big time fluking and some deep, deep current T water, which is why I got the 20-pound Tessa on there now. So that current can't grab my braid anymore and send me to Timbuktu. So there you go. Perfect. Perfect spooling of the reel right there, and we wasted nothing. And all right, Fish-A-Lot, so this is what we're going to be spooling up today. This is a Penn Slammer 3, and this is absolutely a wonderful reel for deep sea or bigger fish applications of fishing. So this is perfect for fishing under bridges, for big fish in heavy structure, anywhere where you have a lot of current, for big fish off of jetties, or even in my case, I'm going to take this thing deep sea fishing for tile fish, where I'm going to use a light jig and get that thing down almost 600-700 feet to the bottom of the surface of the earth. We're going to catch some of those big, delicious tile fish. So there's going to be a lot of different applications of fishing for this reel that I have right here. However, it's so important to make that determination before spooling your line, because this is going to be used for a variety of different fishing situations. But I want to put as much braid on this thing as I possibly can, because I'm going to be fishing up to 600 feet with this fishing reel, or I'm going to be catching these really big black drumfish in heavy current where they could take a lot of line, and I just need enough line on this thing to handle it. And of course, this reel is a perfect candidate for that type of fishing. This is a Penn Slammer 3, and this is the 4500 series of the Penn Slammer 3 right here. And something I really want to point out on a lot of spinning reels out there is this line that you see running right down the middle of the spool. This is advertised as just a modification of the spool that will catch your braided line material so that it doesn't spin on the spool. That is absolute marketing, I would say, and that is meant to catch the fish a lot and not have you out there catch more fish. The worst thing ever is you put all the line on your fishing reel and it spins on the spool, making it utterly useless. You're going to end up having to take it all off or throw it in the garbage, depending how you spooled it, and it's just going to be super, super frustrating. If you're fishing inshore applications, this is absolutely useless as well, because you're never going to use 300 yards of braid on your fishing reels ever for inshore fishing like bass fishing or lake fishing or anything like that. Now in this case, I'm going to drop my line 600 feet for offshore fish like tile fish. I'm going to be fishing in extreme currents for 70, 80 pound black drum. For situations like that, I do want to put as much line as possible on my reel. However, I'm still going to use a monofilament backing. I'm just not going to use as much. For inshore fishing applications, I made a video on exactly how much line to put on here to put 150 yards of braid on this so that you don't waste any line or any money on your fishing line. You basically just take that off into the mono backing and then of course tie on the other half of the line that you owned, especially if you buy 300 yard spools of fishing line. So let's get into it. Again, this is going to be for bigger deep sea applications of fishing. So I'm just going to put a minimal amount of monofilament backing on here, and then I'm going to put the braid on. And all right, so another difference with deep drop fishing and when you're spooling these is really maximizing your reel's line capacity. So for example, this is the OSHA jigger right here, and 40-pound test line on this, I think fits over 300 yards of line. That is an insane amount of line. And this of course is a Penn Slammer 3, which I also use for deep drop fishing. As a matter of fact, you can see a jig head on there right now. So I fish for blackfish, black drum. I fish a lot of different depths with a lot of line on this reel right here. And basically at 30-pound braid on this reel, you can fit 250 yards of line. So what I've done in spooling these is I use just the minimal backing possible. Okay, this is 30-pound high-vis suffix braid, and I literally used, again, just enough backing so that I could actually still see a little bit of the spool of the reel, and I put 250 yards of line on this. I usually buy line in bulk, so I'm usually getting no less than 500 yards of line, and that works out perfect. For 250 yards of line, I know I could spool 2 reels of this, and I'm not wasting any line and any money. For the OSHA jigger, I went up to 65-pound test line on this because I am fishing for blackfish, for wreck fish, for big fish that could put a lot of pressure on this, and I am fishing at depth. So I went up to 65-pound braid on this, and again, I was able to put 250 yards of line on this because with that minimal backing, I know I'm just trying to max out the reel's capacity. Now let's talk about the most simple of tools that you need in order to spool your fishing line to your fishing reel the best method I know how, and that is just a simple pair of vice grip pliers. I absolutely love these things. Just generally, if you don't have them in your house, I recommend getting them. I use them for everything: plumbing, fixing furniture, fishing, you name it. These are absolutely fantastic. Of course, your fishing line that you need, and a screwdriver, and that is it. Now all you're gonna do is take your screwdriver, you're gonna put it through the box, just like that. You're gonna take your fishing line, put it down onto the screwdriver, and then of course you're gonna take your vice grip pliers and you're gonna clamp it around the screwdriver, just like this, putting pressure onto the box. And you're gonna see why that's so important here in this very next step on actually spooling your fishing line. So now, an important step in this whole process is to actually rig up your fishing rod just like you're gonna fish for the spooling process. So here's the backing is gonna go on first. I'm gonna thread it through all the eyes of my fishing reel, and then I'm gonna begin spooling the line on. So now the fishing line is put through all the guides of my rod. I'm gonna actually put this on the fishing reel. Now to do this, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna tie a uni knot. Now the uni knot actually stands for universal knot, and they were not joking when they made up that name. This is just a great knot to really secure this line to the spool, and I'll show you exactly how to do that right here. Now we're outside, I'm using natural light. I'm not sure how well you can see this. I'm trying to use this tree right here to give you some backing for the fishing line. But all you're gonna do is you're gonna take the tag end of your line, this guy right here, and you're gonna fold it over to double up your line, okay? So just like that, that's what it looks like. Then you're gonna fold it over again, just like that. So you're gonna have something that looks like this on one end, your loop on this end, and your tag end right here. Now you're gonna take that tag end and you're gonna pass it through that loop 5 to 7 times to form your uni knot. So just like that. So I think that's 5 or 6 times, that's good enough. And now you're gonna end up something like that. So again, here's your loop. Here's the loop that you just created with the uni knot, and you're gonna actually tighten it all down, just like this. Okay, gonna pull that tight. It's gonna cinch really well, because it's a uni knot, the universal knot, and that is it. So there you go, you have your uni knot, you have your loop. Now what you're gonna do is you're gonna make a second loop within this loop like that. Okay, so you see what I do? Now I have 2 loops here. Now this is gonna double wrap my spool and make sure I have the strongest connection possible to my spool. This is more for, again, peace of mind, knowing that the line is not going to spin in any way when I'm spooling this up. This is not to serve as a fish stop when you get down to the spool of your line. If that happens, you know, you're in trouble already. So just keep that in mind. So here's the double line that we were just talking about. I'm going to place this over the reel just like that, and I'm going to cinch it down. Okay, so now you should have something that looks like this. You have the first wrap is around the reel, and your second wrap is on that loop right there. What you're gonna do now is you're gonna pull this tight, and it'll cinch down pretty well. And now you can see that knot on there. What you're gonna do is you're gonna pull that back and forth until it really cinches down. And you can see right there, it's cinched. I can't move it at all. Now that's ready to be spooled right there as my backing. Another important tip, always make sure your bail is flipped up when you do this. I see so many people, they tie this with the bail down, and then when it gets time to reel, they have nothing to catch and nothing to put the line around the spool of your reel. So now when we flip this down, the reel is ready to go, and we're ready to spool up our fishing reel. All right, so now our next step is we're gonna take our screwdriver and our box, and we're gonna make a hole in the box with the screwdriver, just like that. You're gonna end up with something like this. Now you're gonna take your spool and you're gonna put it over the screwdriver just like that. Now, an important step here not to miss is you want that line to come off the top of the spool just like that. You don't want it coming from underneath, and you don't want it falling off the spool like that. You want it just coming right off the end, just like that as you spool it up, and that's gonna make sure you don't deal with any tangles.
Okay, now that you have your spool on the screwdriver just right, it's time to take your vice grip pliers, put it down on the screwdriver itself, and put pressure between the spool and your hand inside of the box. Kind of squeeze the vice grips together against the spool and clamp it down just like that. So now what you have is the vice grip pliers are holding this in place and putting pressure on the spool so that when you reel it in, you're going to be under constant pressure, making sure that the absolute most even line is going on your fishing reel at all times. And that is all you need, just a box, a spool of line, a screwdriver, and vice grip pliers. Let me show you how the spool's on. All right, and here's your setup right here. No need to do anything fancy. I just put it right there on the ground. Here's my vice grip pliers. The line's gonna come off this way, right off the spool, as you can see there. And it's under pressure, so that's exactly what we want. I'm gonna go grab the fishing reel. I'm gonna start reeling it in. Now, as you're about to see with this type of technique, the advantage is, as I reel in my line, you can see the bend in my fishing pole. I'm under constant pressure the entire time. No need to hold the line, no need to use a rag. If you hold the line with just your bare fingers, you could very often burn yourself when you really get going on this thing. And also, if you're holding the line manually, as you start to spool your reel, you're going to have different variations of pressure just because your grip is going to change as you go through the process. So using this process, I just have a bend in my rod the entire time. I reel it in, the box is holding firm, the vice grips are doing its thing on that end, and it's just a perfect way to put your backing on your fishing reel right here. Now take a look at that. That is about it. So I just have this covered just barely with this fishing line right here, and now I'm going to start to put on the braid as my main line, but that's it. I just have a covering of this mono over the bottom of the spool. I could actually still see the spool through the monofilament, and that's pretty much what I want to do. That's it, just minimal backing, and I want to put as much braid on here as I possibly can. So now I'm going to connect my monofilament backing to my braid, again using a uni knot. This one's going to be the double uni knot. Excellent knot to learn for doing line-to-line connections. All right, so this is going to be our double uni knot. Again, I'm just going to show it to you real fast right here. I got plenty of tutorials on how to tie this on the channel. Make sure to check them out. Put a link in the description below. But here's our two tag ends. I'm going to face them in opposite directions. First, I'll start with the braid end, where I simply just make a loop just like that, and the tag end. I'm going to take this tag end, I'm going to start wrapping it around both the mono and the braid loop. So here we go. 1, 2. Now, an important thing to note when you're doing it this way is you want to double up the wraps on the braid end than the mono end. So typically on the mono end, I'm going to do 5 to 7 wraps. So on the braid end, I'm going to do 10 to 14 wraps. And of course I'm talking, so I'm going to totally forget how many wraps I'm doing, but that's all right. I think that's close to 10, and that should be good enough. So now what you're going to do is you're going to end up with something like this, and you're going to grab all 4 ends of the line. So the mono tag end, the braid main line, braid tag end, mono main line, and you're just going to tighten it down so it'll look something like that. So don't worry about tightening it all the way down. We're going to get to that as soon as we cinch the other end of the line, which is right here. So here's the mono. Oh, there's a friendly bee now buzzing around my head. That should be good. So here's the tag end of the mono. Same thing, we're going to make a loop just like that. And now I'm going to wrap this tag end around both the braid main line and the mono line 5 to 7 times. I think I did about 10 wraps on the other side, so I'm going to do 5 on this side. So that should be good. Again, you're going to get something that looks like this. And again, you're going to just cinch it all down. Don't worry about even the mono side cinching down super tight. That's about good enough. You can see it's not quite a finished knot, but check this out. As you pull on both the main lines, these 2 knots are going to come together, and when they hit each other, they're going to cinch. So there they are right there. And look at that. Now they cinch down tight, and that's not going anywhere. This is really a great option for line-to-line connections, especially when tying a backing to a braid main line. Now, same thing as before. You'll notice the bend in that rod tip up there as I begin to put pressure on the line as I reel, and that means that the line is under constant pressure, just like that. So you can see the vice grip is doing its job. The line's coming off the spool exactly how I want, and that's it. I'm not burning my hand, especially with braid. You could really burn your hands. You don't really want to grip it too hard with a rag because it'll remove the protective wax coating of the line. So this is really just the best way to do it. So here you go. Now as I reel in, you can tell the bend in that rod right there. I am under a lot of tension and pressure when reeling in, and that's making sure that the line is going on super smooth. Take a look at that. Look how even that is. Look how tight that is. That really makes sure that I get as much braid as possible on this spool, and also that I get it on as neatly as possible and without any tangles whatsoever. And so now here's another view of it, okay? I got the vice grips connected to that screwdriver and the spool. Now you can tell when I pull up on the reel, look how much pressure that is on the fishing rod right there itself. So now as I reel in with the reel, that constant pressure is exactly what I want to make sure that that line gets on this fishing reel as even, as smoothly, and as tight as possible. Again, I really want to maximize the space on this reel for deep sea fishing applications. And that's how you do it, Fish-A-Lots. Just so easy. Gotta love it. And all right, Fish-A-Lots, take a look at that. That is the final result right there. And that line has gone on this fishing reel super even, super smooth, and super tight, which is really what I wanted to maximize my line capacity on this reel for deep drop fishing, catching big fish in heavy currents, things like that. And now something to note is I didn't over spool it, right? That's very important because I don't want to deal with tangles. So what I did was I left 1/16 of an inch between the line here on the spool and the lip of the spool right there. That's 1/16 of an inch. That is perfect for me to maximize the amount of line in here where I could even cast this if I want to, and I'm not going to deal with tangles. If you over spool this, what happens is when you click open the bail, the line is going to fall off the reel. You can see it's not doing that right now. And when you go to cast, it's going to tangle up on you, and it's going to be just incredibly annoying. So that's how we do it right there. Hello again, Fish-A-Lots. In a previous episode, I showed you how to spool up an ultralight spinning reel setup with 2-pound monofilament and spool it up with the best way possible so that you don't get any wind knots or tangles in that spool to ruin your day out fishing. Then I showed you how to spool up another spinning reel, this one designed for deep drop fishing in the ocean at depth for larger fish, and that was with braid. Again, the best possible way with no tangles. So in this episode, I'll show you how to spool up this Shimano OSHA jigger, again a deep drop fishing setup, only this time a conventional reel, and I'll show you how to do that the best way possible with, again, no tangles, Johnny Fish-A-Lot style. So tune in and let's get into it. And so the first step again here is to put on a monofilament backing, and of course I'm going to use Andy monofilament for this, and that mono backing is going to be going onto this Shimano OSHA jigger right here, so that when I put on the braid has something to bite into. You don't want to tie the braid directly to the spool of the reel right here, because you will risk the braid just spinning here when you're trying to reel in under pressure, and that's just utterly going to be useless. You're going to have to re-spool the whole thing. So by putting on some mono backing first, the braid will dig into it and it'll stay perfectly stationary. You'll never have to worry about any malfunctions with the braid or the line going onto this spool. So let's do that right now. Now the first step here is just to put the line through each of the guides of the rod, just like you were setting this up to go fishing, okay? And you're gonna see why this is so important here in a second, but this is the first step, even before you tie this monofilament to the reel itself. All right, now that we have this set up, what I'm gonna do is, and this might surprise some of you, I'm gonna tie, once again, a uni knot. So I'm just gonna pass the line right through the reel just like that, and I'm gonna create this loop right here. So I'm just gonna pass the line right through the reel just like that, and I'm gonna create 2 lines right here. You see that? So I just have the tag end right here and the main line right here, and I'm just gonna make a loop just like that. And I have plenty of videos out there on how to tie these uni knots, but this is basically going to be the first step in securing this line to my reel. So I'm just going to start my twists, Just like that, 5 to 7 twists will do you just fine. So that's 5 right there. There we go. And now you're just going to tighten it up so that it forms your uni knot. So here it is here. I'm going to grab all the tag ends and I'm going to pull it tight. And pull it tight just like that. Don't worry about if it cinches all the way down. It's going to cinch down when we pull it against the reel. You can see it's pulling down right there, and now I use a side-to-side motion when it gets close to the spool right there, and that really just locks it in. See that side-to-side motion? And then that knot will just cinch right down against that reel right there, and I'm going to hold it. And there you go. You can see the uni knot. You can see it wrapped around the spool, and that's going to be perfect for just getting a little bit of mono on the spool right here so the braid could dig into it. So next step is, of course, you don't want this big tag end, so we're going to cut that off. Just like that. And now you just put a little bit of tension on there, and look at that, it spools right up. So I get a lot of question on how much should I actually put on this, and the answer is since I'm deep dropping here, I just want to cover this enough. You see, just a thin coating so you can still see the spool through the mono. I just want to cover it up enough so that the braid has enough room to really bite into the mono. And you know what? That's about it right there. I don't want to put too much on this. I have enough on where I got a good coating right there on the spool. And so the main line that we're going to be using is going to be a high-vis braided line. This is 65-pound test line spider wire. You could use anything you like here. It doesn't really matter. I just like the high-vis line so that I could see the line and I could detect really subtle bites. So to connect our main line to the monofilament backing, I'm going to again use a uni knot. Only this time I'm going to use a double uni knot. I have plenty of tutorials on Fishing with Johnny Fish-A-Lot, the channel, on how to tie this, so be sure to check them out if you're interested. But simply, I'm going to cross these lines so that the tag ends are pointed in opposite directions. Then I'm going to make a loop, just like that, and I'm going to tie the uni knot. So again, 5 to 7 wraps will do you just fine. Just keep in mind, the golden rule here with the double uni knot is however many wraps you're planning to do on the mono side, do double on the braid side. So on the mono side, I'm going to do about 5 to 7 wraps. So on the braid side, I want to do 10 to 15 wraps. And that is really all there is to it. Now I'm talking, so I totally forgot how many wraps this is, but I think that's about 10 to 15. That's what you're going to end up with right there. Grab all the ends, pull them simultaneously. Right, you're going to get something that looks like that. Don't worry if it doesn't cinch down all the way. That's going to cinch down when we tighten up the other side, which is going to be this monofilament. So here's the monofilament side, and I'm going to make my loop just like that, and it's going to encompass both the monofilament and the braid main line. So here we go, just going to make some wraps. Again, 5 to 7. 5, you're going to get something that looks like that, very similar on the other side. You're going to grab all ends, the braid and the mono tag end. You're going to pull it all tight, just like that, as tight as you could get it. Again, don't worry if it doesn't cinch down perfect right now. Now what you're going to do is you're going to grab the braid main line, the mono main line. So you're going to push these together, just as you can see here. The two knots are going to merge, and they're going to tighten up on each other, just like that. And that is your double uni knot. Now you're ready to spool your main line onto your reel. Now you got these tag ends. Make sure you cut them off. You cut them off as close as you want. Again, this doesn't really serve much for our fishing purposes, but in this case, I do want a solid knot in case I am deep dropping and I do come down to the knot, and that's going to hold up just fine in all sorts of different fishing environments. So I'm good to go right there. Now let me show you the cheapest, easiest, and most effective way to put all this braid onto that spool as efficiently and tightly as you possibly can. Now, all you need for this technique is a cardboard box, a pair of vice grip pliers right here, and a screwdriver to put your spool through, and I'm going to show you that right now. So basically, just take your screwdriver and you punch it right through the cardboard box just like that. Then you're going to take your line, okay? This is the main line that we attached to the rod, and you're going to stick it right through the screwdriver. Now, the important piece of this is you want the line coming off the spool just right, okay? You want it coming from the top, okay? Just like that. You don't want it coming from underneath, and you don't want it falling off the spool like this. You want that line nice and tight, and we're gonna cinch it down with the vice grip pliers, and you want it coming off just like that. That's very important for getting the line on nice and straight. Next stop, of course, you got your vice grip pliers. You're gonna push down on the spool. You're gonna simultaneously push the screwdriver forward, and then you're gonna tighten the vice grips until it clicks, just like that. All right, now for this setup right here, I really do want to put a lot of pressure on the line as I'm reeling in, because I want to put as much line on that OSHA jigger as I possibly can. And the only way to do that is get this really tight while reeling it in. And that is where these guys come in. I'm just going to put a little bit of weight in this box just to hold it down, just like that. And now this box is not going to move, it's weighted down, and I could really pack in this line on this OSHA jigger, because look, I'm going to go deep drop fishing with this thing. I could be fishing for tile fish in 600 to 900 feet of water, and I want as much line as I possibly can on my spool. So that's where this pressure comes in, and you can easily do this just by putting any weight in a box. Could be a milk can, could be a jug of water, whatever you got laying around the house. I got these couple of weights, fits perfectly in a little box. So now let's get to the next step. All right, so now you can see my monofilament backing is on my spool right here, and now I got my rod attached to that box you see right over there by the tree at my shed. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a ton of pressure, okay, on that spool with the reel. All right, and so there's a better look for you, Fish Lots. You can see that bend in my fishing rod right there, and that is perfect. That's exactly what you want in order to get that line on the spool as tight as possible. And so here we are. I got the bend in the rod, as you can see. I got it pretty much right over the box at a little bit of an angle. Again, hopefully you can see that bend right there. And now we're just gonna start reeling in. I got it weighted down. What that weight in the box really allows me to do is be able to put a lot of pressure on this fishing rod and on the spool itself, because the spool is now pinned between that screwdriver and the vice grips. And take a look, I'm just reeling in, that's all I'm doing. I'm not, I don't have a rag, I don't have to grab the braid. The braid will burn you, make no doubts about it. That braid is hot when you really start peeling it in and pulling it in. And let's face it, your grip is gonna vary as you reel in this line. So this is by far the best way to do it. The tension is constant. It's not gonna vary at all as I reel in, and I'm really packing that braid on there nice and even. Look how that's going on the spool right there. Just super nice, super even. I'm not holding anything. I don't have to do anything. I'm just standing over the box and reeling in the line. And this really is the best way to do it for your spinning gear, for your ultralight gear. In this case, my heavy OSHA jigger, which I'm gonna use for deep drop fishing. It's just great. It's just a great method, and I recommend it for everybody. You just use a box that's laying around the house. Vice grip pliers, I use that for just about everything, so why not fishing? And just a screwdriver, and that's it. And of course, you're gonna have to guide this with your thumb. No big deal, that's how you're gonna have to reel it in anyway, and that's exactly what I'm doing, making sure that line goes on nice and straight. Pretty common with conventional fishing reels that you guide the line onto the spool with your thumb. Now, something I get asked quite often is how much line should I actually put on a spool like this? So you can see this is the end of the spool right here. And I make the same recommendations for my conventional fishing reels as I do my spinning fishing reels. I want this line to maximize how much line actually goes in here. I want this line on this 1/16 of an inch between my spool itself, the line on the spool, and the end of the actual conventional fishing spool, which you can see right on the tip of my thumb right there. And that is the amount, I think that is the max amount that you could put on here without actually getting all balled up and tangled. You don't want to over spool this, because then the line is going to ball up and fall off the spool as you're reeling in. That's going to be a pain, especially when you're reeling in fish. So that's about it right there. You see, that's about 1/16 of an inch, not between the line and this right here, which is a fishing reel, but the spool itself on the inside of the fishing reel. That little black line, that's about 1/16 of an inch, and that is perfect for me for this type of fishing. Now, if you want to be a little bit more conservative because you're not really good at dealing with tangles, or you're new to this, or you just want to lessen the tangles, then I would go down to 1/8 of an inch between the line itself and the spool, or the edge of the spool right here. So there you go, Fish-A-Lots.
And there you go, Fish-A-Lots, a perfectly spooled Shimano OSHA jigger using the same technique that I use for spinning reels for deep drop fishing, as well as ultralight fishing reels, which you could check out at this end cards right here, where I show you exactly how to do this for other type of fishing reels, so you get 0 tangles and you get to maximize your time out on the water. Thanks for tuning in, Fish-A-Lots. I'll see you out there on the water.